Steady your thoughts and observe before you plunge ahead. When emotions cloud us, disaster soon follows. She smoothed her robe over her knees. There is no target in meditation, no judgment. It is the peace, the connection and oneness with yourself that is the key. She paused. I sense your life force is strong. However, it's been suppressed since your childhood, which is why you have trouble grasping your magic. It was crudely done and would never have worked had you been older and trained properly. Meditation will help break the seal on your life force to unleash your abilities, but only if you let it. I stared at Teacher Daoming, my mind whirling. My mother had not wished my magic to strengthen. She and Chang'e must have done what they could to shroud my powers and conceal my existence. I bit my lip, clenching down hard. My mother wanted a quiet life for me, a happy one. After her decades of heartache and terror, she must have thought peace was the best gift she could give me. Perhaps I had wanted it too, until this fire was lit in me to be more than I was, to be all that I could. Teacher Daoming continued, You have great potential. However, before you can harness your powers, you need to understand them. Before you can unleash your energy, you must learn how to grasp it. I hear you're skilled in archery. Could you shoot as you do without becoming one with the bow? She touched the side of my head gently. Some knowledge beats in our hearts, while others are learned by the body and mind. Her words echoed those of my mother, a lesson I should have learned long before. Because some things came easily to me, I grew impatient at those which did not. A wave of emotions swelled in me. Shame at my conduct, gratitude for her patience. I shifted to my knees and stretched out my cupped hands, bowing low. Teacher Daoming, I ask your forgiveness. I was impatient and resentful, arrogant in thinking I knew better. From now, I promise to follow your instructions to the best of my abilities. Her smile infused her face with sudden warmth. She was beautiful, I realized then, though not in the same way my mother was. One had to look a little closer to find the grace in her movements, the strength in her bearing, the delicacy of her features. Hers was a quieter beauty, but no less luminous once it was uncovered. I'm glad to hear that. My fan is getting worn out. Without another word, she rose and walked away. I choked back a laugh, even as I instinctively rubbed my arm. Perhaps Teacher Daoming was not as intimidating as I had thought. And perhaps I might not be as terrible a student as I had feared. My progress was quicker now that I no longer resisted the lessons. Still, it took weeks more before I gained sufficient skill in meditation to advance to using my powers, what I had both craved and dreaded since leaving my home. According to Teacher Daoming, the lights I glimpsed swirling through me was my spiritual energy. While casting enchantments drained us of it, as water trickling from a bucket, it could be replenished through rest and meditation. Without this, our bodies would be no different from a mortal's, and our lives as frail as theirs. Never drain your energy, Chang'e, she cautioned me. Why? Trying to draw more than you possess will leave you unable to sustain your life force, which is the core of your powers, the source of your energy. She spoke slowly, holding my gaze to ensure I was paying attention. That is death to an immortal. Cold sweat broke out over my palms. I had always thought learning to use my magic meant I would be strong. Fear, a distant thing of the past. Never did it occur to me that there would also be danger in using it. How does that happen? I asked. Trying to cast too powerful an enchantment, trying to sustain one for too long, or trying to undo something you can't. My thoughts flew to my mother and the spell which bound her. Are some enchantments unbreakable? All enchantments can be broken if you know how. If you're strong enough, if you're the right person to do it, she said. You don't want to end up hurling your power into a void and getting too caught up to stop. I released a drawn-out breath. It was possible. That was what mattered. As for how, I would figure out later. In the beginning, I was unable to cast even the simplest enchantment, the lights still eluding my grasp. Yet, as the weeks passed, I edged closer until I sensed a stirring deep within, like an unfinished chord on the cusp of harmony. One evening, while Li Wei was having his bath, I found his tea had gone cold. While he would not have cared, it was a cool night, ideal for a warm drink. Closing my eyes, I searched inward for my energy, silver bright, glittering as stardust. It flickered as I reached out, struggling against that unseen force tugging me back. Sweat broke out over my brow, my fists clenching under the strain, but I shoved through, snapping the hidden restraint to grasp the lights. For a moment, they wriggled in my hold like the slippery scales of a fish unwilling to be caught, but then something shifted deep within, imbuing me with a sense of oneness, as though I had finally connected to some vital part of me. My skin tingled like I had been doused in ice water. This was no accident. The lights stilled, yielding to my command, as a stream of glowing energy surged from my fingertips toward the teapot. Steam curled from the spout, the water roiling with heat. I laughed, giddy with the success of my first enchantment. Under Teacher Dowming's guidance, I learned to coax a breeze from the air, freeze raindrops to ice, raise protection shields, and, yes, even summon the bolts of flame I had dreamed of. Many immortals chose not to exert their powers for mundane things that could easily be done without. Yet, in those early days, I practiced whenever I could, no task too small nor tiresome. Once, I unthinkingly summoned a hairpin, which plunged into Li Wei's topknot with more force than intended. His head jerked back, a startled breath hissing from him, though he smiled as he glanced my way. No longer was I fumbling in the dark to grasp a sliver of light. My energy darted readily into my grasp, my magic flowing unbound. Several months into my training, Teacher Dowming brought me to the lush garden just beyond the Chamber of Reflection. It was a windless morning, the lake as still as a mirror. As she raised her hand, 5 luminous spheres formed in the air. Tongues of flame leapt in one, translucent water lapped in the other. The third contained a chunk of coppery earth, and a hazy mist swirled in the fourth. Fire, water, earth, air, the 4 elemental talents of magic that I recalled from her previous lessons. I peered at the last globe, glowing a rich crimson. "What is this?" "Life magic, to heal the body's wounds and ailments. One of the intrinsic talents." She stiffened a little, her lips pressing into thin lines. "One of them? What are the others?" She fixed me with a hard stare, ignoring my question. "Xingyin, which is the strongest of the elemental talents?" I passed my palm over the spheres, the heat mingling with the coolness from the different energies. Fragments of lessons flashed across my mind. Earth might douse fire, but fire could scorch earth. Air might fan a flame or extinguish it. My thoughts wound together into a maze of contradictions. "It depends on the strength of the talents pitted against each other," I finally answered. Her brows snapped into a frown. "That is half an answer." I lowered my head, wishing I had listened more attentively in her class. She continued, "Each talent has its own strengths and weaknesses. All 4 can be equally powerful. What matters most is the strength of the casters, their life force, which determines how much energy is at their disposal, and the skill with which they wield it." As she passed her palm over the first 2 orbs, fire leapt high, engulfing the sphere of water. In the next moment, water surged to drown the flames. "Those strong enough to specialize first need to discover their talent. Most immortals are drawn to 1, maybe 2. Prince Li Wei's fire and life magic are his strongest, while our emperor is one of the few accomplished across the talents, even able to channel sky fire." "Sky fire?" I repeated. It was the first I had heard of it. "Lightning, as wielded by immortals. A rare and powerful magic. Not an element in itself, rather a unique convergence of one's magic." With a flick of her finger, the flames rekindled. "For some, their talent is innate. For most of us, it stems from our natural environment, perhaps because we unconsciously absorb the energy from our surroundings. Those living in the forests and mountains are more skilled in the arts of earth and air. Phoenix immortals are adept in fire magic, and sea immortals cast the most powerful water enchantments. The talents of celestials have always varied across the elements. She turned to me with a grave expression. Which is yours? A thrill raced through me. Teacher Dowming believed I was strong enough to advance. Most immortals possessed enough magic to cast a repertoire of minor enchantments across the talents, lighting fires, healing minor injuries, calling a shower of rain. However, true power lay in the mastery of a talent, and for that, one needed a sufficiently strong life force. It was said that some advanced enchantments were so powerful they could drain a weaker immortal's energy with a single casting. Following her instruction, I reached toward the glowing orbs and released my energy in a cloud of gleaming silver. The earth, air, and life spheres died out at once. Fire flared higher, but a gust of wind surged from the translucent orb, extinguishing the flames before it hurtled across the garden. The willow trees bent sharply, whipping the lake into waves. With a sweep of Teacher Dowming's hand, the wind calmed and died. Her lips curved into a rare smile as my heart pounded like a drum. The wind had wreaked utter destruction upon the once tranquil garden, scattered leaves blanketing the ground, trees swaying wildly, snapped willow branches trailing in the water. Had I done this? Your talent lies with air, but you have some affinity in fire, Teacher Dowming observed. Through my exhilaration, something tugged at the edge of my consciousness, something she had let slip earlier. I gestured toward the glowing spheres. Are these all the talents? A shadow flitted across her face. It's late. You are dismissed, she said abruptly. Curiosity warred with courtesy. I bowed, thanking her for the lesson. But then the question burst from me. If life is one of the intrinsic talents, what are the others? It is forbidden. Without another word, she walked away. Her strange behavior only stoked my curiosity further, weighing on me for the rest of the day. During the evening meal, I ate with little enthusiasm, barely tasting the prawns fried in red peppercorns. Aren't you hungry? Liwei asked, his chopsticks poised above his bowl. I hesitated. Teacher Dowming had said it was forbidden, but he was the only one who might tell me. Beyond life, what are the other intrinsic talents? He was quiet for so long, I thought he too would leave me in the dark. Are we not allowed to even speak of it? I shook my head then. Forget I asked. I don't want you to say anything you shouldn't. He set down his chopsticks, his fingers tapping the table in a restless rhythm. There's just one other. Mind, which used to be among the most powerful talents. However, centuries ago, my father and his allies condemned this magic and banned it across the realm. I refilled the teapot with hot water, letting the tea steep before pouring it into our cups. Why did he do that? Terrifying stories emerged regarding the practices of mind talents, that they drank mortal blood and feasted on the flesh of children to sustain their magic, that their powers had distorted their true forms beyond recognition. He frowned. Rumors, perhaps? After all, they are immortals just as us. The only difference we know for sure is in their eyes, which glitter like those of cut stones. Were their powers truly evil? I asked. Some mind talents could compel others against their will to perform their bidding, a heinous act. Imagine being forced to attack someone, to harm those you love. I shuddered at the thought. How is such a thing possible? Fortunately, few are truly capable of it. The stronger one's life force, the harder it is to compel them, as it requires more energy. A skilled mind talent might only be able to control a powerful immortal for a brief period. A shadow crossed his face. Even if this happens once, that's once too often. Even if it's just for a moment, one's life can be destroyed then. A prison of the mind is far worse than that of the body. Do many immortals have this power? Why aren't we warned about it? My father doesn't like this to be mentioned. Besides, it is a rare skill, not even my father wields it. Part of me could not help wondering if that was why the Emperor hated this magic. Because he could not understand it. Because it was the one talent that eluded him. But I buried those thoughts, unwilling to speak them aloud. No matter how close Li Wei and I had grown, I could not let myself forget that he was the son of the Celestial Emperor. He continued. Most came from the Cloud Wall, once a domain of our kingdom which bordered the Golden Desert. When the ban was announced, a few volunteered to seal their powers to resettle in our lands. However, most refused. It's a hard thing to sacrifice years of study and practice, I ventured, thinking of my own efforts to master just a few skills. Those who did were well compensated. The Cloud Immortals were stirred to rebellion by an ambitious upstart in a gambit to seize power and declare himself king. After they proclaimed their separation from us, my father burned the ancient scrolls of their magic, burying their ashes at the bottom of the 4 seas. A harsh retaliation. Was that the end of it? I asked. Unfortunately, the Cloud Wall King retrieved the ashes and reconstructed the scrolls. He was weakened, but with whatever dark arts he learned, his new powers outstripped his old. With newly forged alliances with the northern and western seas, he declared war upon us. The losses were catastrophic, thousands of immortals perishing, until at last a truce was agreed. However, my father swore that no Cloud Immortal would ever be allowed into the Celestial Kingdom again. I searched my memory for all Ping-a had told me of the 8 kingdoms of the Immortal Realm. There had been no mention of the Cloud Wall. Did it become part of another kingdom? He paused. It's now known as the Demon Realm. I choked on my tea, coughing and sputtering as Li Wei passed me a handkerchief to wipe my chin. The Demon Realm was said to be a land of mist and fog, home to fearsome beasts, monsters, and evil sorcerers. Somehow, it was easier to despise them before realizing, as Li Wei had said, they were like us. My mind spun with all I had learned, and I could not help asking, "Did you agree with what your father did?" He grimaced. According to my father, there can be no respect without fear. To be a powerful leader, one needs to govern with an iron hand, to crush resistance with even greater strength. I'm a disappointment to him. He reprimands me for being too soft. But no matter what he does, I can't change who I am. What does he do? A tightness formed in my gut. I had never seen Li Wei look so troubled before. His fingers curled into a fist on the table. When he spoke, his voice was low. He only wants what's best for me. But when my turn comes to take the throne, I will not rule as he does. Reaching out, I touched his clenched knuckles in comfort. All I knew of such matters were from our lessons, what I studied in the texts, the stories of great kings and queens, both mortal and immortal. But I was sure of one thing, that the Celestial Kingdom, any kingdom, would fare better under a ruler who listened with an open mind than one who demanded unswerving obedience. I had no love for the Celestial Empress, and less for the Emperor who had imprisoned my mother, although I had never met him before. From what I gleaned from gossip and learned myself, Li Wei was nothing like his parents. Unlike many in positions of power, he took no pleasure in imposing his will or pushing others down. Never did he condescend to me, as far too many had. He morphed from a laughing friend to a patient instructor, and whichever role he took, his care and consideration warmed me. Whenever we debated our lessons or sparred, he drove me to improve myself, never surrendering an advantage I had not earned. Each night I went to bed aching and exhausted, yet my heart aglow to be treated as his equal. Archery was where I shone, whether using the short bow, which was lighter and faster, or the long bow, which allowed for greater accuracy. A few commanders soon instructed their troops to watch me while I trained. Their presence unnerved me. I was afraid of making a fool of myself by dropping my arrows or missing the target. Yet the moment I drew my bow, a calm spread over me. Perhaps my control over my emotions had improved with Teacher Daoming's instruction, although it was still far from perfect. One afternoon, I arrived at the archery station to find it set up differently, with just 2 targets in the distance. Li Wei stood there holding a bow in each hand. A little behind him was General Chang'e with a small cluster of soldiers, Shu Xiao among them. "It's been 3 months. Did you forget?" Li Wei called out. My spirit sank as I recalled my reckless wager. Still, I plastered on a bright smile as I took the bow from him. "Of course not. What are the terms?" 3 arrows each, he proposed. "The winner is whoever scores the most points." I nodded in acceptance, moving to stand behind the line. His arrow whistled as it flew toward the target, but I averted my gaze. His performance was a distraction I could ill afford. Keeping my attention upon my board, I released the first arrow, piercing the target in the center. The second followed in its trail into the crimson eye of the board, and my last arrow split the former right down its middle. Having scored 3 perfect strikes, my confidence swelled, until I saw Li Wei's board, a mirror of my own. General Chang'e frowned, unable to decide the victor. Striding to the weapons rack, he pulled out a clay disc, no bigger than my fist. "Our advanced archers use this to practice their skills. When the disc is released, it will soar away. The first person who shoots it down will be the winner." I groaned inwardly. I did not have much experience with moving targets. "Perhaps this is too difficult for Xingyin," Li Wei said. Pride got the better of me. "It's fine," I said curtly, drawing an arrow through my bow. General Chang'e threw the disc high. It shot through the air, faster than anticipated. I blinked, half a heartbeat of hesitation, my arrow already hurtling toward the soaring disc, as Li Wei's gold-feathered arrow shattered the clay. I fought down my dismay. It had been a fair match. "You win," I conceded. "I'll collect tomorrow." He flashed a grin at me, which raised my hackles. "Another month or 2, I wouldn't be able to beat you. Time your battles better next time." As he strode away, I glowered at his retreating back, no longer caring about the dignity of losing with grace. Shu Xiao clapped me on my shoulder. "It was close. For a moment, I thought you had him, but those flying targets are tricky. I miss mine half the time." "Close is not good enough." She pulled a face. "You're too hard on yourself. He beat you today, but you've only been training for a few months." A little cheered by her words, I turned to General Chang'e. His head was tilted to one side, an assessing light in his eyes as he stared at the boards. "General Chang'e, could I try that disc again?" I would not lose a second time. 8. A loud pounding on the doors jolted me awake. "Xingyin, are you up?" Li Wei called from outside. I groaned, my limbs and eyes still heavy with sleep. "Come back when the sun is up." "No!" He sounded gratingly cheerful. "Must I remind you of our wager?" I glared in his direction, a wasted endeavor when he could not see it. How tempted I was to leave him waiting outside while I stayed in bed and ignored him. But that would be both petulant and pointless. More than the fact he was the crown prince, I had given my word. Kicking aside the covers, I dragged myself up and washed my face with cold water, too tired to even heat it, before throwing on a silk robe and gathering my hair into a low knot. When I stepped out, I found Li Wei leaning by the wall, tapping his foot impatiently. He had dressed simply in plain gray brocade, his hair tied up with a black ribbon. It was dark outside, except for the glowing rosewood lanterns. Not even the kitchen attendants had risen yet to prepare the morning meal. "Where are we going?" I asked as we hurried through the courtyard. "Outside the palace. We don't have lessons this morning, as our teachers will attend court for an audience with my father. Even General Chang'e has released us today because of Captain Wenche's return from battle." My ears pricked up. Captain Wenche was one of the youngest and most celebrated warriors in the Celestial Kingdom. The soldiers spoke of his accomplishments and his skill with the sword and bow with such reverence, my curiosity had been roused. Unfortunately, he was often away on assignment, to the dismay of his many admirers, and when he returned, it was never for long. I had hoped to meet him myself on the training field, and part of me was a little disappointed to miss this chance. Yet a thrill coursed through me at the thought of leaving the palace as I followed Li Wei to a deserted courtyard ringed by a thick stone wall. A pulse of his energy glided over my skin, as warm as a sun-drenched breeze. "I'm disguising our auras," he explained. "Otherwise, the guards will sense me leaving." From Li Wei's furtive behavior, this was not an official outing. Little wonder that we did not head to the main entrance, as he was not permitted outside without the customary troop of guards and attendants. Only after he assumed his court duties could he come and go as he pleased. Struck by curiosity, I asked, "What's my aura like? I can sense yours, those around me, just not my own." He gazed at me intently as I tensed with anticipation. "Rain," he said finally. "Rain?" I repeated, feeling like a bubble pricked. It sounded dismal and dull, not exciting in the least. "A silver storm. Fierce, relentless, untamed." An unexpected warmth kindled in me at his words. He grinned. "Do you like that explanation?" My brief pleasure was abruptly doused. "Only if you mean it." "I mean everything I say. Maybe that's why I displease my father so." He sounded somber now, his teasing manner gone. Trying to lighten his mood again, I asked, "Will whatever you're doing help us walk through the wall too?" "Of course not. Just be patient." His eyes narrowed in concentration as the air around us shimmered once more. A gust of wind surged, sweeping us into the air. My heart plunged, my stomach turning over as we were tossed over the wall and set back down again at the edge of a large forest. I staggered, clutching onto a tree. My breaths came short and fast. The sensation of nothingness, of falling through the air, brought unwelcome memories crashing down. The terror of the moment when I had leapt from Ping'e's cloud. Li Wei stared at me. "You're shaking. What's wrong?" Unable to speak, I crouched on the ground, pressing my forehead to my arms. He had been hurrying me all morning, yet now he sat beside me in companionable silence. His arms slid across my shoulders, drawing me to him. I inhaled deeply, catching his scent like spring grass, fresh with a tinge of sweetness. Slowly, his heat seeped into my trembling body until I was steady once more. Conscious of his nearness, I shifted away, clasping my hands around my knees and trying not to think how cold I felt without his touch. "I'm fine. We don't need to sit here anymore," I said. "What happened?" he asked gently. I don't like falling." A sliver of the truth, barely scraping its surface. Footsteps thudded against the ground, growing louder. Guards patrolling the area? Taking my hand, Li Wei helped me up and we sprinted into the forest. "Was this how you got out the first time I met you?" I asked as we ran. After the months of training, I found it easy to keep pace with him. "Yes, I was curious about my companion. I would be spending a lot of time with this person, and I wanted to make sure he or she wasn't annoying, awful, or dull. I'd already visited 6 houses before the Golden Lotus Mansion." "Why did you hold the competition?" I wanted to know. "Friends, real ones, are hard to come by in the Jade Palace." His blunt admission took me by surprise. Countless courtiers and nobles vied for his attention. Part of my duties included sifting through the gifts and invitations which streamed into the courtyard of eternal tranquility each day. Li Wei ignored most of the requests, preferring to read or paint in his room than attend any banquet. "I ask myself, sometimes," he continued in a low voice, "how many would seek my friendship if I were not the Emperor's son? A position I did nothing to earn." I would. The words sprang to my tongue, yet I could not speak them aloud. It sounded like hollow flattery when it was nothing but the truth. How many times did I wish he were not the son of the Celestial Emperor, and that I did not have to lie about who I was to keep my loved ones safe. With the contest, I hoped to meet someone new, untainted by ambition or greed. My mother thwarted me with her conditions, but fortunately, I met you. It was the first time he told me why he had aided my participation. "I thought you helped me because you pitied me," I admitted with a pang of shame. I had not deserved his sympathy, not when I misled him into thinking my family was dead. Yet how could I have corrected him without more lies? A smile lit his face. I helped you because I liked you. You speak your mind, you take pride in yourself. You're honest in what you want and fearless in reaching for it. You don't pretend to be someone else around me. And while you didn't know who I was then, that holds true even now. Guilt doused the glow in my chest. I found myself unable to hold his stare. I was pretending. I had been right from the start. I was myself, and yet I was not who he thought I was. He continued, oblivious to my unease. When I'm with you, I feel you see me for who I am, not the crown or the kingdom, not the favors I can extend or withhold. He sighed then with exaggerated heaviness. Little did I know what I got myself into. Every night I fall asleep, worn out from your attacks, your insults ringing between my ears. Nothing you didn't deserve or ask for, I retorted. Might I remind you that you're the one who insists on sparring with me day and night? I ignored the hand he extended to me, glaring at him instead. Li Wei cleared his throat meaningfully. And might I remind you, you're not honoring the terms of our bet right now. Swallowing several choice insults, I took his hand. When his strong fingers closed around mine, I tried to quell the unexpected leap in my pulse. We strolled through the forest, only halting at the sound of voices. The air hummed as though alive, with the mingled auras of immortals. We're here. He pulled me through the trees into a large clearing. Dozens of stalls were packed together, coiling into a large spiral like the whorl of a shell. They were crafted from lacquered wood in red and black, blue and yellow, with painted signs displayed on the top. Mouth-watering smells of unfamiliar and tempting foods laced the air, and there was an undercurrent of excitement among the crowd already browsing at this early hour. What is this place? I breathed in a tone of wonder. He seemed pleased by my reaction. This market is held once every 5 years. It appears at dawn and ends by noon. Immortals come from all over to trade possessions, magical items, or rare delicacies. As we strode deeper into the clearing, heads swung toward Li Wei like flowers to the sun. Even without his regal attire, his bearing and looks commanded attention. When he paid them no regard, their eyes slid to me, narrowed with speculation, widened in surprise. We were an incongruous pair. But what did I care for the opinions they wore as plainly as the ornaments in their hair? Nothing could dampen my excitement today, my exhilaration at being here with him. As we walked past the stalls, merchants called out loudly to entice prospective customers. Enchanted amulets! Lychees from the mortal realm! Rubies from the Fire Valley! Customers purchased items by trading goods of their own, from sparkling gems and pearls the size of my thumb to sachets of fragrant herbs and rings of precious metal. I would have lingered at every stall, but Li Wei hastened me along. We only have a couple of hours until the market closes. The rarer items are farther down, toward the center, he explained. Tea from Kunlun Mountain, called a young lady as she offered cups to those passing by. The aroma from her tea was so fragrant, she soon attracted a long line of customers, Li Wei and I among them. Kunlun was a mountain range of great mystical energy in the world below. It was the only place in the mortal realm where immortals were permitted to reside, as long as they kept themselves hidden from sight. The rarest plants and flowers grew there, cultivated by the unique harmony of mortal and immortal energy. Sipping the tea, I found it wonderful, rich and aromatic, with a hint of bitterness that only enhanced its flavor. Li Wei pulled out a jade ring and exchanged it for several silk bags of tea. Why the ring? I asked. Why the jewels, herbs, and such? Some are for ornamentation, while the rest possess special properties or power. These rings, he lifted his pouch, each contain a fragment of energy which can aid in the casting of enchantments. A stall caught my attention, one piled with shells. Some were as large as my fist, and others the size of my nail. Their colors ranged from pure white to azure, and a few with a blush of a lotus petal. These shells are enchanted to capture your favorite sound, melody, or even a loved one's voice. They were picked from the deepest waters in the Southern Sea, the merchant said with pride. The Southern Sea, Pinga's home. I picked up a beautiful white shell, tracing my finger along its curve. However, with nothing to trade, I laid it down again. Beside me, Li Wei dug out a ring of red jade, offering it to the vendor. I pulled his arm back, not wanting him to buy it for me. Will you trade the shell for a song? I asked the merchant. I could play you a tune to capture into these shells, which might enhance their value. How well do you play? His gaze shifted, skimming the crowd for less troublesome customers. Before I lost his attention completely, I drew out my flute and played a lively melody, one of my mother's favorites of the rain trickling through a bamboo forest. When the song finished, I was startled to find a small group of people around me, some holding out a colored stone or a silver ring. Before I could refuse, the shell vendor swooped in and took all the items. With deft hands, he wrapped up the white shell I wanted, placing it into my palm along with half the items I had earned. The rest he dropped into his own pouch. A pleasure doing business with you, the merchant said, winking at me. My mouth fell open as Li Wei clapped me on my back. You should set up a stall here next time, he suggested, in an amused tone. I grinned. And what would you do? Sit beside me and sell your paintings? He tilted his head to one side, his eyes bright. Perhaps. We could travel the realm, stopping where we choose and leaving when we grow bored. It would be a good life. Yes, it would. The words leapt out before I could stifle them. Impossible, a voice whispered in my mind, telling me nothing I did not know. The celestial crown prince was not destined for such a life, unfettered by responsibility or duty. And how would such aimless wanderings help my mother? How could I leave her, alone and trapped, while I indulged my selfish impulses? A pulse of silence beat through us, the air thick with sudden tension. To distract him, I lifted my palm to show him my earnings, a couple of silver rings, 2 drops of amber, and a small blue stone. Let's find some breakfast, I said, pretending our earlier words had been forgotten. We bought fresh lychees, crisp chive dumplings, and almond cakes, eating them as we made our way through the market. Our fingers were sticky with a coating of oil, sugar, and crumbs as we began peeling away the red, scaly skin of the lychees, its translucent flesh sweeter than honey. Li Wei likened their delicate flavor to the immortal peaches, which took over 3 centuries to ripen. But sadly, the lychees possessed none of their magical properties. It was almost midday when we reached the end of the marketplace, the very center of the spiral of stalls. The last one was crafted from black lacquered wood, with a small sign that read, Precious Ornaments. Its owner sat serenely among her wares, not calling out or waving to the customers. Her trays were crammed with carved pieces of jasper and jade, carnelian and turquoise, which could be fastened to one's waist. Li Wei picked up 2 exquisite ornaments of white jade carved into endless knots, a symbol of longevity and luck. Above them gleamed a clear gemstone shaped as a tear, and from its base hung a tassel of azure silk. Observing his interest, the seller drew closer. Young lord, you have excellent taste. Those are sky-drop tassels. Ask a loved one or dear friend to channel a little of their energy into it. When the stone is clear, they are safe and well. But when it turns red, they are in the utmost danger, and you can use the tassel to find them. I will take these. Li Wei counted out 10 rings of grass-green jade, which he passed to her. She thanked him as she tucked the rings into her sleeve. Li Wei's thumb grazed one of the stones in his palm. His magic swirled forth, the clear gem now aglitter with golden flecks of light. He offered it to me, but I did not take it. What is this for? Can't I give my friend a gift? When he opened his mouth, I braced for another reminder of our wager, but all he said was, It would please me greatly if you would take it. Something in his gaze held mine fast. I nodded, unable to find the words. He smiled at me before bending to tie the tassel to my waist. The jade gleamed mutedly against the pale silk of my dress. How I wished I had something to give him in exchange. "Thank you. I will treasure it always," I told him. "You should," he said gravely. "This way you'll know when I'm in danger, and you have no excuse not to come to my aid." I laughed aloud. An inconceivable thought that the crown prince of the celestial kingdom would ever need my help. He gave me the other tassel. "Now you, channel your energy into the stone." I paused. "Are you sure?" "Friends watch out for each other, if that is what you want too." The slight hesitation in his voice pricked me. Did he think I might refuse? I cherished this about him, that despite his position, he never demanded, that he always gave me the choice. I pressed my fingers against the stone, releasing my energy into it. It glowed just as the one tied to my waist, yet with silver lights sparkling in its depths. With a smile, Li Wei fastened it to his black sash. "The sun and the moon, a matched pair," the vendor remarked as she picked up her trays. I looked at her, uncertain of her meaning, but as another customer approached her, we walked away. At noon, the crowd dispersed, the marketplace obscured by swirling clouds of white and gray. The merchants packed up their stalls, stepped upon their clouds, and were swiftly whisked away. In just a few moments, all trace of the market had vanished, as though it had never existed, except for the weight of the jade dangling from my waist, the lingering sweetness of lychees in my mouth, and the warmth nestled deep in my heart. 9. In the Celestial Kingdom, there were no seasons to chart the passing of time. 2 years swept by so quickly, I almost lost count but for the waxing and waning of the moon. The ease I felt here reminded me of my home, except for the nagging ache in my chest whenever I thought of my mother. How I longed to see her again, and not just as a distant orb in the heavens. I consoled myself that at least I'd found a sense of purpose here, which I had never known before, striving to better myself, to find a way home. Dawn till dusk, Li Wei and I were together, studying our lessons or sparring on the field. Mealtimes were my favorite, when we would talk about anything that took our fancy, whether serious matters or in jest. Once, Li Wei asked me about my home and how my parents had died. I had bitten down hard on my tongue, wishing I could have told him the truth. From the tightening of his lips, I knew he had been disappointed by my reticence. How it wrenched me inside. I was not heartless, laden with guilt at deceiving him. Our friendship meant more to me than anything I possessed. Tomorrow would be his birthday. A grand celebration was planned, as this year was a special one, marking the assumption of his court duties as the crown prince. He had invited me to attend, but I declined, having little interest in spending an evening with their celestial majesties and their court. Nonetheless, I had agonized over his gift, as I owned little of value, and finally settled on composing him a song. He had a keen appreciation for music, though he did not play an instrument himself. However, it took longer than anticipated, as I could only work late at night or early in the morning, weaving a privacy shield around my room to prevent the music from drifting across the courtyard. I rummaged through the drawers, pulling out the white shell I had bought from the market those years ago. It gleamed in my palm, the curved whorls ending in an elegant spire. Placing the shell on the table, I cast a shred of wind into it to awaken its magic. Then I lifted the flute to my mouth, letting my breath slide into the instrument. The shell glowed as the melody poured forth, its light fading once the last note ended. Hastily, I wrapped it with a piece of silk. I had taken too long. I was already late. I dashed across the courtyard, halting just outside his chamber. A powerful aura pulsed within, jagged, sharp, and strong, one I had done my best to avoid so far. Sweat slicked my palms as I slid the doors open and entered. The Celestial Empress sat beside Li Wei, while her attendants stood behind her. Her green robe pooled on the floor like a carpet of moss, gold, leaf-shaped pins gleaming from her hair. I had never seen the Empress at such close quarters before. Memories of my parting from my mother flashed across my mind, cutting me as though it had been yesterday. I knelt to greet her as etiquette demanded, folding my body over until my brow and palms touched the floor. The Empress did not give me leave to rise. "Is this the behavior of the companion to the Crown Prince? To rise this late and leave my son to attend to himself?" Her voice was thick with censure. I should have apologized or pleaded for forgiveness, but though my body was taut with tension, my lips stayed tightly sealed. I was no longer a cowering child, afraid of her shadow. "Rise," Li Wei said. I lifted my head from the ground, yet remained on my knees. I would give the Empress no reason to dismiss me. "Honorable Mother, Xingyin was only late this morning because of my task." Li Wei looked at me. "Did you find the snow ginseng root?" "Yes." I was glad for his quick thinking. "Could you give it to the kitchen to be brewed into a tonic? Ask them to send it with the afternoon meal to their celestial majesties." Conscious of the watchful attendants, I pressed my forehead to the ground in acknowledgement. Rising to my feet, I hurried to the entrance, eager to escape. The Empress's voice drifted after me, a more pleasant tone now that I was gone. "Li Wei, you're a filial son," she praised him. "Tomorrow's banquet will be a grand event. The flower and forest immortals will join us, as will the sea monarchs. A rare chance to affirm our goodwill toward the four seas. We will also be honored by the attendance of Queen Fengjian and her daughter." "Princess Fengmei?" Li Wei asked with a catch in his voice. "Of course. The Phoenix Kingdom is our most important ally, more than ever with the threat of that cursed demon realm still hanging over us," she added, in a tone laden with meaning. "I hope you'll be an attentive host, and that you know what's expected of you." Beyond the doorway, I glanced back at Li Wei in sympathy. He did not enjoy such occasions, avoiding as many as he could. But it would be impossible for him to escape his own celebration, particularly with the sharp eye of his mother watching his every move. Li Wei and I had planted a small garden in a corner of the courtyard. Grabbing a shovel, I dug up the snow ginseng root, grown from a seed just a month ago. While it usually took years to cultivate ginseng, Li Wei's enchantment helped the plants mature faster. Admiring the perfectly formed root, its flesh so white that it was almost translucent, I deemed it a worthwhile sacrifice to save my hide. In the bustling kitchen, I found Minyi, whom I had grown to know well. After passing her the ginseng, I decided to wait while she prepared our food. She scrutinized me, her nose wrinkling. "Xingyan, you're so pale. Are you eating enough?" "I was late this morning, and Her Celestial Majesty scolded me," I told her. She sighed in commiseration. The Empress was much feared for her temper, fierce, malicious, so easily roused, and few were spared it. "Our Empress has too much fire in her. Those from the Phoenix Kingdom have such hot tempers," she remarked. "Phoenix Kingdom? Isn't she a celestial?" She shook her head, casting a furtive look around. Minyi was privy to the stories and gossip from the many attendants who visited the kitchen. It was a simple matter to trade a delicacy for the latest news, and in the evenings, a cup of wine loosened even the stiffest tongues, and the one thing she loved more than collecting gossip was sharing it with her friends. Before she wed the Emperor, Her Celestial Majesty was a princess of the Phoenix Kingdom. She was not so ill-humored at first, but her temper worsened after the deaths of her beloved kin. It was the first I had heard of it. I did not think it possible, yet pity flared in me at the thought of her loss. "What happened to them?" Minnie's face clouded over. "A tragic tale. The Empress is a relation of Lady Shihe, the sun goddess who dwells in the fragrant mulberry grove in the eastern sky. Lady Shihe had 10 children whom she used to take upon her phoenix-drawn chariot, one at a time, to ride across the heavens. Her children were powerful creatures of pure light and heat, revered as the sun in the mortal world." I went cold inside. 10 children? 10 sons? The kin of the Celestial Empress? Minyi stirred a simmering pot of noodles, thankfully oblivious to my mounting distress. The phoenixes are a close relation of the three-legged sunbirds. Sunbirds. The word seared me. What happened? I choked out. Many years ago, Lady Chang'e was gravely injured. To aid her, the Empress sent a trusted general to the fragrant mulberry grove to drive the chariot on her behalf. Only one sunbird was permitted to join him, but they disobeyed, all 10 leaping into the chariot at once and flying away before the general could stop them. The sunbirds did not wish to return, soaring through the skies night and day. Minnie paused for a moment. It was a terrible time of blinding light and blistering heat. The mortals suffered most, their fragile world scorched to the brink of destruction. She continued, the Celestial Emperor sent messengers to reprimand the sunbirds, but they ignored them all. They were so swift, no one could catch them. The Emperor might have struck them down himself, but the Empress shielded them from attack. Under her protection, the sunbirds would have burned the world to a cinder, but they were finally shot down by a brave mortal, my father. My legs trembled. I clutched the side of the table, my elbow knocking over a bowl of yellow plums that rolled onto the floor. Avoiding a glare from an irate cook, I bent down to pick up the fruit, glad for the opportunity to hide my face. I sifted through my faded memories of the book I had read once, my father's story as retold by the mortals. The sunbirds were said to be favored by the gods, under their protection. But the Celestial Empress's blood relations? It was little wonder that she had sought to punish my father for slaying them. I swallowed to moisten my parched throat. The mortal? What of him? Minnie sprinkled chopped green chives over 2 bowls of noodles, then lifted them onto a tray of polished wood. Almost as an afterthought, she added a small dish of vegetables. I suppressed the urge to grab her arm and shake the rest of the tale from her. Oh, the mortal's deeds were praised by the Emperor, and he was rewarded with the elixir of immortality. Wasn't His Celestial Majesty angry with him for killing the Empress's kin? I could not conceal the urgency in my voice. Minnie leaned closer, speaking softer now. It was said that the Emperor might have had a hand in the sunbird's downfall. The mortal shot them down with an enchanted bow of ice, and he wore an amulet that protected him from their fire. How could a mere mortal have obtained such treasures, much less used them without His Celestial Majesty's blessing? Something jarred me. Why would the Emperor do such a thing? Why didn't he stop the sunbirds himself? Was it just to avoid a confrontation with the Empress? What happened next? I asked, though I feared her answer too. She looked up in surprise. Perhaps she thought that was the end of it, the world saved from ruin, the mortal rewarded for his service to the Celestial Emperor. Lady Chang'e was furious at the deaths of her children, and she severed all ties with the Empress. As a relation of the sun goddess, the Phoenix Queen was incensed too. Before, there was much talk of an engagement between her daughter and His Highness, but that was called off. A shame, as it would have been a most eligible match. Some gripe that Princess Fengmei is 100 years older than His Highness, yet those are trifling numbers for such as us. Li Wei had never mentioned a betrothal before, though I now understood his strange reaction to the princess's name this morning. There were so many peach blossom rumors surrounding him, I had come to regard them with no more weight than the petals blown by the wind, forgotten once they landed on the ground. But that was not what I wanted to know now. What of the mortal's fate after he was gifted the elixir? I probed, hoping she would not notice my keen interest. Perhaps I might glean some clue as to my father's whereabouts. Minnie frowned as she lifted a porcelain teapot onto the tray. Fragrant tendrils of jasmine wafted into my nostrils. The mortal never ascended to the skies as an immortal. No one knows what became of him. Her voice trailed off as she turned away abruptly. I did not question her further. I was not surprised at Minnie's reluctance to speak of my mother's ascension. The punishment of the moon goddess was not a tale shared freely. Their celestial majesties did not appreciate being reminded of those who had displeased them. I thanked Minnie, clutching the tray of food as I left the kitchen in a daze. The Empress disliked me, believing me unworthy to be her son's companion. I shuddered, imagining her spite if she ever discovered that my father had slain the sunbirds. I breathed deeply, trying to calm the churning in my stomach. My mother's instincts had been right. The Empress did bear my father a grudge. She would show us no mercy. She would snatch at the chance to destroy us. I would not let her, I resolved. Though I could do nothing now except work as hard as I could, honing my skills and searching for a way to keep us all safe. When I returned to Li Wei's room, I was relieved to find the Empress had left, in no mood to feign respect and obedience. We ate in silence, neither of us inclined to idle chatter today. Minnie's dumplings were beautifully made, plump with pork and leek, its skin fried to a crisp golden brown, yet they tasted as paper on my tongue. "Xingyan, you look tired," Li Wei observed. My hands flew to my cheeks, discreetly pinching the color back into them. He was the second person to have commented on my pallor this morning. "I didn't sleep well." The excuse sounded limp even to my ears. "Don't take what my mother said to heart. She seems fierce, but she's just overly concerned for me." I nodded woodenly, not trusting myself to speak. Lifting our books from the table, I waited for him by the doors. He took the heavy stack from me. "I've told you that you don't need to carry my things for me." "What would your mother say?" I asked. "Don't tell her," he said, flashing me a conspiratorial grin. I returned his smile, though I could not discard my unease. All morning I was unsettled, barely hearing the teacher's lessons, earning myself a scowl from General Jianyun and a scolding from teacher Daoming. And now, by the archery boards, I missed all my targets while training alongside Shu Xiao. She winced at a particularly bad shot, which left my arrow buried in the grass a foot from the board. "Xingyan? Is there dust in your eyes?" Before I could reply, General Jianyun stalked toward me, the hollows of his cheeks pulled taut. I had worn his patience out today. "Xingyan, have our practices become so easy that you no longer bother to exert yourself?" I lowered my head, shame rising in me. General Jianyun was a diligent mentor to Li Wei and me. While many of our teachers focused their efforts on the Crown Prince, he divided his attention equally between us. Hearing the general's raised tone, Li Wei glanced over from where he was sparring with a soldier. He lunged forward, his sword outstretched, and with a few well-placed thrusts, won his match in moments. He then wasted no time in striding to my side, and while I was glad for his support, I did not want him to witness my humiliation. General Jianyun plucked a leather bag from the weapons rack. "Let's try something more challenging today. If you miss any, stay back for an extra hour of practice tonight." With that, he flung the contents of the bag into the air. 10 small clay discs shot out, each no larger than a loquat. "Hit them all," he barked. Before he finished speaking, I had shot down the first 2. In the same breath, I knocked my next arrow and took down another 3 in rapid succession. Dropping to one knee, I shot 2 more that soared into the sky. The final 3 were almost out of sight. I positioned my arrow carefully to hit one and then another. The last disc slipped beyond my sight. I closed my eyes, straining to listen through the silence. My mind was clear, devoid of thought. A faint flutter reached my ears, a whisper of wind. I released my arrow with a twang, the disc shattering into fragments. I stilled, unnerved by the sudden hush and the crowd which had gathered. Then, a tall, lean soldier I had never seen before clapped, the sound breaking the daze. Shu Xiao cheered as Li Wei stepped forward, lifting me up by my waist and spinning me around. "Li Wei, put me down," I hissed, conscious of the watchful stares. For some reason, I found it hard to catch my breath, my pulse leaping in an erratic rhythm. He laughed as he set me upon the ground, and with a parting grin, headed back to the sword-fighting station. The soldiers dispersed, but General Jianyun remained, studying me for a moment. "Have you given any thought to your future? When you're no longer the Crown Prince's companion?" he finally asked. His blunt question struck me. I had not imagined that my position would end, but Li Wei would soon assume his court duties. His lessons would decrease, and then, what would I do? Become his attendant, serving his meals and tea? The idea seared me like a hot coal. General Chang'e continued, oblivious to my unease. Your archery is unmatched. According to Teacher Dowming, your magic is strong. I think you would do very well in the army, and your future could be brighter than the sun. My mind whirled with the possibilities. My father was a soldier. It had been his path to glory, to slaying the sunbirds and saving the world. A great honor, a terrible burden. His reward had been the elixir which turned my mother and me immortal, though it parted us from him too. Snapping out of my stupor, I asked, General Chang'e, how does one advance in the army? Fighting for our kingdom, performing each task to the best of one's abilities, protecting your fellow soldiers. Hard work, obedience, loyalty throughout the years. What greater honor is there than to serve our kingdom and their celestial majesties? Pride rang in his voice. A curt refusal sprang to my tongue, which I quashed out of respect to the general, though I could not stop my lip from curling. He did not seem to notice, adding as an afterthought, Some also dream of winning the Crimson Lion Talisman, though such a thing is rare. Crimson Lion Talisman? I had never heard of it before. It is the highest honor of the Celestial Army, awarded by the Emperor himself. Its bearer is granted a royal favor. A wild hope fluttered in my chest. How is this talisman won? I cursed the tremor in my voice, hoping he did not hear my eagerness. Through exceptional acts of valor, courage, or sacrifice, in service to the Celestial Kingdom. He frowned. However, this is not something to pin your hopes upon. In my lifetime, the talisman has been awarded less than a handful of times. General Chang'e must be hundreds of years old. 1,000? How could I surpass the mighty warriors here when I had barely grasped my powers a couple of years ago? No, I could not allow myself to think so. I could not admit defeat before I tried. Among all the mortals across the centuries, it was my father who had caught the Emperor's attention to win the elixir of immortality. I would strive for no less. Yet something reigned in my surging excitement. If I joined the Celestial Army, I would have to leave the courtyard of eternal tranquility. I was safe there, as happy as I could be, away from my mother. I was becoming muddled inside. I could never forget why I was here, that I had been torn from my home, and that I had come to the Jade Palace to find my way back. General Chang'e's talk of honor and service did not move me. This was not my home. I had no loyalty to this place. I even bore a grudge against their celestial majesties, which I was willing to swallow for my own ends. And yet, this offer gave me a glimpse into a future where I could advance through my own merit. A chance to grasp at my mother's freedom, better by far than my wild fantasies of soaring to the moon and shattering the enchantment which bound her there. What life would await us after that? An eternity of being hunted and living in fear. General Chang'e cleared his throat, perhaps wondering at my prolonged silence. I cupped my hands as I bowed to him. Thank you for your confidence in me, General Chang'e. I promise to consider it. His offer tempted me more than I cared to admit. I was already inclined to accept, though I could not do so before speaking to Li Wei. Over our meal that night, Li Wei asked, What did you and General Chang'e talk about? It seems to be a serious conversation. Surprised that he had noticed, I lifted my chopsticks to stuff a lump of rice into my mouth. For some reason, I was reluctant to tell him about the general's offer. A few excuses drifted through my mind, but I had only lied to him once before, and that was out of necessity. General Chang'e suggested that I join the army after my role here comes to an end. And? He sounded confused. Who told you it was ending? I placed my chopsticks down on the table and fixed him with a somber stare. Li Wei, how long will things go on this way? Once you take on your responsibilities, you will have less time for lessons. You won't need a companion. For once, he appeared at a loss. "But you're my friend." How those words tore at my conscience, yet I could not think of myself alone. "I am your friend, here or wherever I go." "Do you want to leave me? To join the army?" There was a note of incredulity in his voice, and, buried beneath, hurt. "There are things I want, which you know nothing of. I do have my own dreams." My voice was hoarse with emotion. The years I had spent here training and studying were happy ones, and yet these were just the rungs of the ladder that scaled my ambition. Perhaps Li Wei sensed me drawing away, the hardening of my resolve. He leaned toward me as he asked, "What are your dreams? Let me help, however I can." The words hovered at the tip of my tongue. To confide in him, to tell him the truth. He was a celestial prince, powerful and favored, but I stifled the urge. I was unsure of how things might change between us if he knew who I was. That I had lied to him, that I was the daughter of the disgraced goddess who had defied his father's wishes, and of the mortal who had slain his mother's beloved sunbirds. "No. You can't help me," I said softly. "But I thank you for wanting to." His hand covered mine, an unexpected tingle shooting through my arm. "My offer stands, any time, whatever you need. Think about it, and don't make any hasty decisions." I had believed my mind made up, yet, pinned by the intensity in his gaze, I could only nod in reply. "Tomorrow," I told myself, cowardly. "I will decide tomorrow." 10. I bolted upright, my scream piercing the night. My eyes darted around the dark chamber as I gripped the bed covers, crumpling them between my fingers. I was not home. I was not too late. My mother and Ping'e were not dead. Such nightmares had plagued me before, yet never in the courtyard of eternal tranquility. Until now. Perhaps my encounter with the Celestial Empress or the uncertainty of my future had caused a relapse into the fears of my past. Footsteps pounded across the courtyard. My doors were flung open, the cool night air rushing in as Li Wei stood in the entrance. He crossed the room and sat down on my bed, lacing his fingers through mine, his grip warm and strong. "You were screaming. Are you all right?" "A dream." My breaths were shaky and uneven. My terror had been all too real. The image of my mother's lifeless form flashed across my mind, my fear melding with a wrenching longing for home. Tears, unbidden, pricked my eyes. His other hand cradled my face, his thumb brushing my cheek. He had only seen me cry once before, when we first met by the river. Without hesitation, he pulled me into his arms and held me tight. I clutched him in return, his embrace awakening a need in me, unfamiliar and fierce. My guard lowered. I let myself be comforted by his strength, my body sinking against his as the dam on my emotions sprang free. My tears drenched his clothes, the white silk damp now as I lifted my head away. Only then did I realize he wore just his inner robe. He must have come right from bed in his haste. My pulse raced, although I had seen him dressed so 1,000 times before. With the corner of my sleeve, I dabbed the thin material to dry it. His heartbeat quickened against my palm as his arms tightened around me, kindling a heat which surged through my veins. Our months of companionship melted away. It was like we were seeing each other for the first time. No longer was he the youth I had befriended, the young man who teased me. His touch inflamed my senses. His gaze stole my breath. I reached out to smooth his long hair from his face, tousled from slumber and gleaming darkly against the whiteness of his robe. My lips parted. His eyes shifted to them, as deep as midnight pools. He bent and pressed his mouth to mine firmly, yet with an aching tenderness. I inhaled deeply, his warm, clean scent laced with the fragrance of the flowers from the courtyard. One of his hands clasped the back of my head, while the other encircled my waist. My arms were wound tight around his neck. I did not know how they came to be there. We held each other so closely, his breath slipped into my mouth, hot and sweet as it mingled with my own. His lips pressed down harder, parting mine, our tongues seeking and entangling. A melting heat spread from my core all the way down to my toes. My limbs were weak as though turned to liquid as we fell, entwined, onto my bed. A gust of wind surged through the open doors. The pale blue curtains around my bed billowed as soft as gossamer clouds. As the window panels rattled, I jerked upright, shivering from the loss of his warmth. My gaze shifted to the courtyard beyond. Anyone passing by could have seen what we were doing. Fortunately, it was still dark, the moon in the sky our only witness. He sat up beside me, running his hands through his hair. "Xingyan, I'm sorry." His words were a splash of cold water, a rude awakening from my daze. Of course he would feel regret. In the darkness of night, stirred by pity and the outpouring of my emotions, it was little wonder he felt obliged to indulge me, and I had been only too eager to take advantage of his kindness. "You have nothing to feel sorry about." My voice was light as I turned away, letting my hair veil my face. In his silence, I read agreement. "This was a mistake for us both, a moment of madness which will be forgotten by morning." A clumsy attempt to salvage my pride. He clasped my hand tightly, pressing it to his chest. "Madness? I've never felt so sane in my life. Do you want to forget this happened? I cannot." My heart beat wildly as the wings of a bird against the bars of its cage. Yet fear and reason, ever vigilant, reared up. "We shouldn't be doing this." He tilted his head toward me. "Why?" His question was startling in its simplicity, but it was not as easy as he believed. There were too many reasons against us which he knew nothing of because I had kept them from him. He lowered his voice, as though making a confession. "I've wanted to kiss you for a long time now." Heat suffused me again, gliding across my skin like I had lain in the sun. His words drove my doubts away as I reached out and pulled him close, as he bent his head to mine once more. My eyes widened and then drifted shut, lost in a languid haze of desire like I was floating on a river of stars. When we finally broke apart, our breathing was harsh and ragged as we lay entangled in the moonlight, until a stirring in the stillness heralded the approach of dawn. Remembering the day, I scrambled to my feet, digging through the drawer for my gift. As I pressed the silk-wrapped bundle into his hand, I suppressed the urge to snatch it back again. What was a humble shell to the priceless treasures he owned? He pulled the cloth away, staring at the shell within. I picked it up and blew gently into it, the shell glowing as my song filled the room. A joyous one, rippling with promise and hope, and yearning, I realized now. The song of my heart, before I had known it myself. He did not move until it finished. "It's beautiful. What is it called?" he wanted to know. I smiled through the sudden thickness in my throat. "It's yours to name. I composed it for you." He took the shell from me and lifted it again, but I caught his arm. "Listen to it when I'm not here." His body stiffened as he twisted around to search my face. "Are you leaving?" "I didn't mean it that way. It's your birthday gift, not a farewell one." My conscience pricked me at how I evaded his question. He threaded his fingers through mine again, his tension easing. "Thank you. I've never received a more wonderful gift," he added with a teasing smile. "And now I don't have to plead with you to play me a song anymore." I drew away, glaring at him with mock anger. "Am I so easily replaced?" "I never want to find out." With a regretful sigh, he released me and rose from my bed. "I must leave before the attendants awaken." I gathered my courage, calling after him. "Li Wei?" We don't have lessons tomorrow. Shall we spend the day together? He paused by the entrance, nodding once, his lips curved as he closed the doors after him. Alone once more, my mind awoke from the spell I was under. Guilt assailed me, fierce and unrelenting. The Celestial Emperor had shown my mother no mercy, condemning her to eternal imprisonment. I recalled my mother's fear of the Empress, her terror stabbing me with remorse. How could I feel this way about their son? Was I so weak to betray her so easily? I pressed my fingers to my temples, shoving them through my hair. But this was no betrayal of my mother. Even in the depths of her misery, she had not spoken a word of spite against the Emperor and Empress. She would not hold this against me. All she ever wanted was my happiness. I was my own person, separate from my parents, as was Li Wei, and he was nothing like them. After all our time together, I knew that better than anyone. He was my dearest friend before what he was to me now. And I would not hold him to account for these events long past and circumstances beyond his control. How I wished I could unburden my heart to him, to reveal all the parts of myself. Li Wei would do nothing to hurt me, but I hesitated to entangle him in my affairs, to pit him against his parents when I knew of his tense relations with them. And the coward in me recoiled from his disappointment. A lover's deceit pierced deeper than a friend's. I hated these lies, this fear and doubt. But all this paled at the threat of discovery. The Jade Palace was not a place for sharing such secrets. And here, my mother and I would find little mercy from the Emperor's harshness, the Empress's spite. More so after all I had learned of how our families were bound. No, I would not break my promise to my mother, not until I knew it would be safe. I lay awake in my bed until the rays of the sun slid out. In the morning light, last night's desire faded to the haze of a dream, except for the memory of his lips, seared deep into my soul. 11. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. My black hair fell smoothly to my waist, my skin glowing from my afternoons in the sun. While my features might be unremarkable, I was content with what I saw, even the cleft in my chin which the Celestial Empress had criticized as a mark of ill temper. I reached for one of my usual dresses, but then pulled out a light blue silk instead, embroidered with colorful birds. When I slipped it on, a starling stitched in green thread spread its wings and flew once around the skirt. My life force had indeed strengthened. Min Yi had asked her friend, a skilled seamstress, to make this, after complaining my clothes were too plain and unbecoming. My closet was indeed filled with white garments. I had not minded, as they reminded me of my mother. But now, life was vivid with color. An unusual interest in my appearance gripped me today. Rarely had I dressed with such care. There was a spring in my step as I walked across the courtyard, but outside Li Wei's chamber, I hesitated. Had it been a dream? What if he did not remember? Worse yet, what if he regretted all that had happened? Steeling myself, I pushed the doors open and entered. He was already up, sitting by the table in a brocade robe knotted around his waist with a length of black silk. A ring of silver pulled his hair up, flowing like a river of ink down his back. His eyes were as dark as they had always been, yet 100 times more beautiful to me now. His gaze lingered over me as he rose to his feet. Don't look so astonished. I can get dressed without someone holding up my clothes for me. A smile tugged at his lips as he added, though I much prefer it when it's you. My treacherous mind conjured up images of all the times I had draped silk and brocade over his shoulders, how my fingers had grazed the hollow of his neck whenever I adjusted the folds of his robe, my hands encircling his waist to tie his sash. I had not given it a second thought then, yet now my heart raced as my throat went dry. Xingyan. My name on his lips stirred me. I glanced at him, noticing the slender box that he held out to me. It's your birthday, not mine. It's good luck to exchange gifts, he said by way of explanation. When I made no move to take the box, he flipped the lid open and pulled out a hairpin. Crafted from wood, it was lacquered in rich shades of blue, studded with tiny clear stones which snared and fractured the light. My breath caught in my throat. Hairpins were traditionally gifted as a love token, but I quenched the hope that sparked in me. We had made no such promises to each other. As for last night, I was still unsure what it meant in the light of day. I made this a while ago, to match the meaning of your name. It took me a while to get the colors right. He had made this? For me? It was exquisite, his skill capturing all the temperamental moods of the sky. And even if it were not, even if it were just a shaft of plain wood, it would mean no less to me. He leaned forward and slid the pin into my hair, just as he had the first time we met. Thank you, I managed, lifting my gaze to his. We only have the morning. My father has asked to see me before the banquet. He picked up a tiered basket from the table before reaching for my hand with his other. Will you change your mind and come tonight? It would mean a great deal to me to have you there. It would make it a lot less dull. His mouth curved into a persuasive smile. My insides twisted at the thought of seeing their celestial majesties. But this was Li Wei's celebration, and a part of me was curious about this side of him which I so rarely saw, that of the heir to the throne. And now, I found myself wanting to spend each moment with him, feeling an unfamiliar twinge when we were apart. Yes, I told him, I will come. In the courtyard, Li Wei summoned a cloud. It struck me that he could now leave the palace at will, which meant he would assume his court duties soon. I pushed aside a wave of anxiety. I would not taint today with doubts of tomorrow or fears of the past. Although when I stared at the cloud, I could not help thinking of the last time I had flown on one with Ping'e. Stepping onto it, Li Wei pulled me up behind him. The cloud was soft and cool yet firm beneath my feet. When it darted through the air, I stumbled, but Li Wei grabbed my hand to steady me and did not let go. After a few moments, I began to relax. The cloud soared so smoothly that I soon forgot my fears. Flying in the daylight was infinitely more pleasurable than fleeing in the night. Towering mountains, shimmering lakes, and lush emerald forests unfurled, like a scroll painting beneath our feet. As we darted through a light shower of rain, the droplets that grazed my skin were as refreshing as morning dew. I might have been cold with the gathering dark clouds obscuring the sun, but for Li Wei's hands over mine, infusing me with warmth. We landed in the middle of a forest, the likes of which I had never seen before. Not in the celestial kingdom, not even in my dreams. Peach blossom trees bloomed as far as my eye could see, their branches laden with pink and white flowers that laced the air with a heady sweetness. Whenever the wind blew, a scattering of petals drifted to the ground. I caught one in my palm, velvet soft, lighter than air. Where are we? Somewhere in the mortal realm. The mortal realm? My voice rose in alarm. Immortals were forbidden from descending here without leave from the celestial emperor. Long ago, they had roamed this world at leisure. Perhaps they enjoyed the rush of power to walk among those weaker, to hear their songs of worship or terrified pleas. To the mortals, they were not just immortals, they were gods. However, this had led to great turmoil. Mortals were terrified by magic, and too many destinies were altered through such interference, causing the untimely deaths of some or saving others from fated calamities. The Keeper of Mortal Fates persuaded the Celestial Emperor to issue an edict, banning all immortals from venturing here freely. Though many lamented this outcome, none dared to challenge the command. Since then, our realm was veiled from mortal sight, and with each passing year, their memories of us faded further into myth and legend. All they saw now when they looked up into the sky were the sun, moon, and stars. Are we allowed to be here? I peered furtively at the sky, half expecting the Keeper of Mortal Fates to descend and haul us back for punishment. Li Wei lifted the oblong piece of jade which hung by his waist, intricately carved with a dragon, an imperial seal. With this, we can go anywhere we wish, he assured me, dropping it down where it clinked against the skydrop tassel. One of the few benefits of attending those lengthy discussions at court. After walking a little farther into the forest, we sat beside a gurgling stream. The soft grass was blanketed by pale petals, a few already browning at their edges, a reminder that nothing here stayed the same, each moment bringing all creatures closer to their inevitable end. I could not help thinking of my father, growing older with each passing day. A longing gripped me to search for him, to seek him out if he lived still. But Li Wei knew nothing of my parents, and how could I tell him now? I was glad he could not see my face as he unpacked the basket. Out came a porcelain wine jar, golden pears, and an assortment of steamed buns, some stuffed with sweet bean paste, others with meat. As I reached for one, my hand collided into his. He whisked the plate out of my reach. "How about a challenge for these?" I groaned inwardly. Without my bow, he would probably best me at any other weapon. And while I did not care much for the prize, I cared even less for losing. Oblivious to my discontent, Li Wei searched the ground until he found 2 sturdy sticks, tossing me one. I caught it midair. "Don't you think the odds are weighted in your favor? You're the better swordsman." "At least for now," I muttered under my breath. He circled me with predatory grace. "Already conceding defeat?" I leapt to my feet at once, my fingers tightening around the rough bark. A length of white silk appeared in his palm. "I'll cover one of my eyes, but I'll still win." "By all means," I said sweetly, trying not to gnash my teeth. I could have spurned his arrogant offer, but I would grasp any advantage just to dent his pride. A breeze swept through the trees, raining flowers upon us as we stood opposite each other. I sprang at his blindfolded side first, hoping to take him by surprise. Li Wei flung his stick up to block mine, then withdrew quickly to strike my calf. I hissed, whirling to stab him in the chest. A breath whooshed from his lips as I darted out of his reach a moment before we flew at each other in earnest. The peace of the forest disintegrated with the crunch of our feet against the rocks and dried leaves, the crash from our colliding sticks. I could not help a rush of admiration for his technique, his fierce attack yet swift recoil, each move controlled and yet free. Our match was closer than expected, and I hoped with some luck I might win. Spotting an opening, I lunged forward, but he leaned back low, my stick slicing through empty air. Before I could retreat, his hard blow knocked the stick from my hand. I stifled a cry, struggling to conceal my frustration. "If it had been with the bow, I would have beaten you with both of my eyes closed." Grabbing a bun from the basket, I tossed it to him. He caught it, but offered it to me at once. "Here, you have it. It's your prize." Picking up a pear, I sank my teeth into its ripe flesh, its sweet and fragrant juice filling my mouth. When he tried to give it to me again, I shook my head. "Do you want to challenge me for the right not to eat it?" I asked archly. He shot me an icy look before biting into the soft bread. It smelled delicious, the rich fragrance of roasted pork wafting toward me. "Make sure you don't choke on it," I said with an unfeigned smile. Hunger was a small price to pay for the irate expression that flashed across his face. I had lost the match, yet somehow gained the advantage. Gazing into the overcast sky, I marveled at how everything seemed more beautiful. Even the rain clouds were no longer gloomy and threatening, instead imbued with dark majesty. After we had eaten, he poured me a cup of wine. As the delicate fragrance of osmanthus sprang in the air, I stilled, recalling a forest of moon-white blossoms. My fingers clenched around the cup as I lifted it in a toast. "May you always be happy." His gaze rested on me. "If I'm always as happy as I am now, that would be the best wish of all." The wine slid down my throat with a heady warmth. After we had drained our cups, he refilled them and raised his to me in turn. "May all your dreams come true." I wondered what he would think if he knew what they were. For a long time, my dreams were about regaining what I had lost in the past. However, since last night, or perhaps even before, A hope for the future had taken root in my heart. "What are your dreams?" he asked, just as he did yesterday, as though he had plucked the thoughts from me. "To be with my loved ones," I said after a pause. It was the truth, but the hollow type, which was gilded in deceit. As his eyes darkened and he leaned closer, my breathing quickened. "But I'll settle for beating you today," I blurted the first thing in my mind, cursing myself when he drew away. He clasped his hands behind his head as he lay down on the grass. "Care to make good on your big words from earlier?" "Why not? I won't take it easy on you just because it's your birthday." I was not as confident as I sounded. I had never shot blindfolded before. A golden bow materialized on the ground before us, exquisitely carved with feathers curling along its limbs. "I wanted to show this to you," Li Wei said as he rose to his feet. "One of the most powerful weapons in our treasury. This might be a good chance to test it." I picked it up, my fingers tingling where they touched the metal. "Where are the arrows?" Li Wei moved behind me, our bodies mere inches apart. With his arms stretched out on each side of me, he guided me to raise the bow and draw its silvery string. My pulse raced and my head spun. I would miss any target in our current position, even if it were 5 paces away. A flaming arrow formed in my grasp, crackling as though alive. Startled, I would have dropped the bow, but Li Wei's grip tightened over mine. When we finally loosened our hold over the string, the arrow vanished. There are few weapons as powerful in existence. Each arrow from the Phoenix firebow can cause grave injury with just a single strike, but only those with a strong life force can wield such a weapon effectively, he cautioned. I stared at the bow, recalling the faded cover of the mortal book. Was it true that my father had used a bow of ice to bring down the sunbirds? An enchanted weapon from the immortal realm? Could someone with a weak life force, a mortal perhaps, use such a weapon? I asked. He pondered the question. Magical items possess their own power. Most of them can be used by anyone, even mortals. However, the stronger its user, the more powerful the item becomes, as it draws its user's energy to augment and replenish its own. If this bow is wielded by one with a weak life force, not only would he or she find it difficult to control, but its might would be greatly diminished. How does this bow draw our energy? It doesn't feel any different from the others. He leaned closer, his breath coiling into my ear. A weapon as the Phoenix firebow forms a connection with its user, seamlessly absorbing his or her energy. This makes it powerful, but also dangerous. Dangerous? I repeated, trying to think of anything but the heat from his body melding with my own. Dangerous, because in the tumult of battle, the users of such weapons may not realize how much energy has been expended until it's too late, he said gravely. I swallowed hard, recalling Teacher Daoming's stern warning never to drain myself. Stepping out of his arms, I passed the bow to him. You first. Did you have a challenge in mind? He asked. How about one of skill, not speed this time? I suggested, thinking about my prior loss. He bent down to pick up 2 withered peach blossoms. As his magic swirled over them, their color bloomed once more, the petals gleaming like they were sculpted from rose quartz. Whoever shoots it down from the farthest distance will be the winner. I took one of the flowers from his palm, now as hard as stone. Gone was his teasing demeanor as he stared ahead with narrowed eyes, the bow raised, its string drawn. At his nod, I released the first blossom. It shot up, hurtling away faster than a hummingbird, spinning through the air. Several seconds passed, the flower now a speck in the horizon. With a twang, Li Wei's arrow plunged forward, shattering the petals in a burst of fiery sparks. An excellent shot. I was unsure if I could surpass it, blindfolded as I would be. It was on the tip of my tongue to retract my earlier boast, to demand a match on equal terms, but I quelled the impulse as I took the bow. Eager to test its might, I ran my fingers over the gleaming string, stiffer than those woven from silk. As Li Wei tied the white cloth over my eyes, his knuckles brushed my cheeks. a distraction I could ill afford as I inhaled deeply to clear my mind. Once ready, I nodded. A low thrum broke the quiet, a faint whirling, fading with every passing moment. Almost imperceptible now, yet still I waited, straining my ears. At the precise moment it slipped into silence, my arrows sprang free, whistling through the air, striking with a clink. Something shattered, catching fire with a hiss. I raised my hand to tug the blindfold down, but strong arms encircled me, the scent of sun-warmed grass drowning my senses. His lips crushed mine, pressing them apart, his warm breath threaded with the lingering sweetness from the wine. I shivered, not from the cold, but the heat surging through my veins. Clutching his shoulders, I held him closer to me still. His mouth slid lower, trailing a scorching path down my neck with a hunger that left me breathless. With my free hand, I pulled the cloth away, blinking at the sudden brightness. We fell onto the ground, a carpet of petals softer than any bed, my body alight with 1,000 glittering sensations. The first drops of rain were soft and frail, easily brushed aside, but they soon swelled to a torrential flood, impossible to ignore. We lay on the ground, letting the rain wash over us, drenching us as thoroughly as though we had swum in the river. Our breaths were heavy and uneven, our fingers tangling in the wet grass. "Who won?" I asked, drifting back to the present. He shot me an incredulous look. "At a time like this? That is what concerns you?" "I won," I answered my own question with a contented sigh. "What makes you think so?" "If you had won, you wouldn't have distracted me. You would have rubbed it in my face, mercilessly." He raised himself up on an elbow to stare at me. "Is that what you believe?" he asked in an aggrieved tone. "Very well. The kiss had nothing to do with how you looked when you drew the bow and hit the mark, even though it had already disappeared." He shook his head. "Why did I fall in love with someone who takes such pleasure in grinding my pride into the dust?" My lips parted in disbelief. "You love me?" "After all our time together, did I have a choice?" I laid my palm against his chest, in no mood for flippancy. "Are you serious?" The light in his eyes blazed a path to my heart as his hand reached out to capture mine. "Yes." As a child, my mother had cautioned me against looking directly at the sun, telling me the brightness of its glare could blind me. Perhaps it was something her own mother told her. While it might be true for mortals, I now doubted such a thing could harm an immortal's sight. Still, her warnings stuck. Whenever I saw the fiery orb in the sky, I would instinctively turn or shield myself. Today, I had finally dared to gaze at the sun, allowing its radiance to blaze through me unhindered, spilling through my veins until I was aglow. Never did I imagine such luminous joy existed, and never again would I be content to remain in the shadows. After the downpour, the sky was clear once more. Leeway summoned a cloud to take us home, and on the way we dried our clothes. Had we returned in our sodden state, we would have given rise to prying questions and unwanted gossip. As we flew back to the Jade Palace, my spirits were lighter than the clouds we passed. In my room, I sank onto my bed in a dreamlike daze. Rest was far from my mind as the exhilaration coursing through me smothered all hope of sleep. When someone knocked, I opened the doors to find an attendant holding out a roll of paper bound with silk cord. "His Highness asked me to give this to you." As I took the paper and thanked him, he added, "Someone is waiting for His Highness outside." Wondering who it might be, I entered the courtyard to find a girl sitting in the pavilion. Her aura was warm and light, though it pulsed with strength, too. She was startlingly pretty, with slender, upturned eyes and a heart-shaped face and delicate features. Rose silk draped her tall frame, and her dark hair was held up by gold hairpins, from which strands of rubies cascaded, glowing with inner flame. I bowed to her in greeting. Was she a courtier's daughter, or one of the Empress's favored ladies? "Is Prince Liwei here?" Her voice was gentle and sweet. Tendrils of jealousy wound around my heart, but I gave her a pleasant smile. His Highness is with their celestial majesties. As her shoulders drooped, I added, Is there anything I can help you with? I have a gift for His Highness, but I can give it to him later. The girl glanced down at the half-finished painting of a peach blossom tree on the table. A few brushes were soaking in a pitcher of water, and a porcelain tray lay beside it, still wet with paint. Liwei must have worked on this just a short while ago. Is this Prince Liwei's work? She traced the outline of the branches. It's beautiful. His Highness has many skills, I said. As she rose to leave, her elbow knocked over a paintbrush. Dark green paint splattered across the artwork. She gasped as she pulled out a silk handkerchief, dabbing furiously at the paper. I rushed forward to help her, jostling the pitcher. It tipped over, water spilling onto the table, soaking the artwork in moments. Of the once exquisitely painted tree, only dark green smudges could be seen in the sodden mess. Her fingers twisted her handkerchief into knots, her throat working with words she did not speak. It might have been the wind, I said solemnly. She blinked at me. Or a bird, she agreed quickly. Our eyes met in a profound moment of understanding. Shortly after, she left, turning around once to stare at the courtyard. Back in my room, I unrolled the piece of paper from Liwei. It was a painting of me, standing beneath a flowering tree, an arrow drawn through my bow, poised in the moment before flight. My gaze was intent on the target, my mouth set in determination, my back straight and tall. My pulse quickened. To think he saw me this way, strong and, somehow, beautiful. At the bottom of the paper, a message was written in his bold brush strokes. You may have won the challenge, but not the greatest prize. A slow smile spread across my face at the memory of our earlier embrace. Taking a piece of paper, I dipped my brush in the ink and wrote my reply. There are no prizes in the game of hearts. My mother would have been pleased. My calligraphy had improved. Folding my note up, I dropped it into my pouch. I would find a fitting moment to give it to him tonight. 12. The Hall of Eastern Light had no ceiling, opening to the starlit sky. Its white stone walls were streaked with veins of pure gold, while the floor was paved with jade tiles carved into flowers. Glowing crystal pillars illuminated the room, as did the hundreds of silk lanterns strung between them in fiery shades of crimson and vermilion. The fragrance of rare blossoms perfumed the air, mingling with the delicious aromas from the food piled onto the rosewood tables. Coveted immortal peaches were stacked high on silver platters to be distributed at the discretion of the Celestial Empress. Just one of these peaches, creamy ivory with a divine blush, had the power to strengthen an immortal's life force or prolong a mortal's life. Even in the Celestial Kingdom, such decadence was rare. The richly dressed guests greeted each other effusively, flushed with excitement and wine. I had only just arrived, and already I was lost in this sea of strangers. Someone tapped my shoulder. It was General Chang'e, for once without his armor, a long coat of silver brocade draped over his gray robe. I cupped my hands and bowed, relieved to see someone I knew. Is this your first banquet? He asked. Yes, His Highness invited me tonight. A brief silence followed. Well, have you given any thought to my offer? He asked bluntly. My eyes fixed onto a jade tile as I fumbled for an answer. Oh, I would have snatched at this opportunity before, but now a new fear pulsed through me at the thought of being separated from Liwei for weeks, maybe months at a stretch. It was not that he had displaced my mother, but rather my heart was cleaved in two when once it had been whole. I would do it, I knew I would, yet selfishly I wanted a little more time here. Our love was too new, too precious to risk lightly. I would speak to Liwei tonight, I resolved. After the festivities, I would tell him what I could without revealing my mother's name. He would understand. He would not press me for more. And perhaps, together, we would find our way. General Chang'e, perhaps we should not talk of such matters on His Highness's birthday. I hoped he would allow me this delay. His brows bunched with displeasure, but he nodded as he glanced around the crowded room.
Do you recognize any of these peacocks here?
A strangled laugh burst from my throat, which I attempted to disguise with a cough.
I've been in the army too long. I don't flatter or say things I don't mean. Take my word for it. This lot of courtiers are only good for dressing in fine feathers and chirping empty compliments.
General Chang'e's lip curled with distaste as he jerked his head at a man in front of us.
That one, though, is more of a cunning crow, the Emperor's loyal advisor, yet his advice is often self-serving.
It was rare for General Chang'e to speak so disparagingly of another, and I wondered who had earned his contempt. I could not see the man's face, just his fine purple robe and the pale gloves that covered his hands, an uncommon accessory which struck me at once. It was Minister Wu, who swung around as though sensing our eyes upon him. He ignored me, his lips pinched as he bowed to General Chang'e. The sight of the minister turned my stomach, stirring anew old misery and terror. So wrapped up was I in my thoughts, I almost collided into the tall immortal who stopped before us, the embroidered bamboo leaves on his robe rustling in emerald silk. A gray sash was tied around his waist, his hair pulled into a glossy top knot secured with an ebony pin. His aura rushed over me, cool and fresh, yet dense and strong, like an autumn wind thick with crushed leaves and rain. His black eyes swept over me with little interest before he greeted General Chang'e, cupping his hands together and stretching them out as he bowed. The stranger drew the general aside, which gave me the opportunity to study him further. He carried himself with the assurance of authority, yet he appeared not much older than I, unless he was one of those powerful immortals concealing 1,000 years with his life force. His face was arresting, high cheekbones with a strong jaw and a well-formed, if somewhat stern mouth. I did not recall seeing him at the training field, but I doubted he was a courtier from the way his eyes flicked impatiently around the room, as though such gaiety bored him. I took a step forward, intending to excuse myself. There was little enjoyment in being excluded, relegated to no more than a piece of furniture, though navigating this crowd alone daunted me too. General Chang'e started as though he had forgotten my presence.
Ah, Xingyan, have you met Captain Wenshi?
The celebrated commander? One of the finest warriors in the kingdom, despite being just 100 years older than me? Yet before I could greet him, he turned away abruptly, as though eager for me to be gone. He was insufferable, I decided, biting down on my tongue, trying not to let his discourtesy bother me, even as I was furious with myself for ever having wanted to meet him.
Xingyan is the Crown Prince's companion,
added General Chang'e. The arrogant young captain swung to me then, his face alight with sudden interest.
The one who trains with His Highness? The archer?
Yes, I replied curtly, still stung by his earlier rudeness.
I only returned a few days ago. I saw you yesterday in the field when you shot those discs. I've never seen such fine marksmanship before.
A smile hovered on his lips. I blinked, finally recognizing him, the tall soldier who had clapped first. His gaze slid over the azure silk of my dress, the creamy magnolias with golden centers embroidered on my skirt. A green brocade belt shot through with silver was tied around my waist. Tucked in my hair was the pin Li Wei had gifted me.
I apologize for not recognizing you earlier. In this dress, you look...
His voice trailed off, the tips of his ears reddening. Like a useless peacock? I finished his sentence for him, with a grin at General Chang'e. Captain Wenshi did not laugh.
I meant to say, in this dress, you don't look like the warrior you are.
His compliment filled me with unexpected pleasure. Perhaps he was not as insufferable as I had thought.
Would you like to sit with us? He invited.
I accepted gladly. I had just caught a glimpse of Lady Meiling's father, and was as keen to keep my distance from him as he was from me. Our table was in the front with a clear view of the dais. There, a rosewood table was set before the white jade thrones, flanked by smaller ones on each side. Tonight, the visiting royalty were honored by being seated alongside their celestial majesties, though they had yet to make an appearance. A hush fell over the room then. The air thrummed with power as the royal family entered, everyone scrambling to fall to their knees. I lifted my head an inch to catch a glimpse of the emperor who had imprisoned my mother. Even surrounded by the most powerful immortals of the realm, the celestial emperor dazzled. His aura blazed with impenetrable might, that of a stone mountain, an endless glacier. Scarlet and azure dragons were embroidered upon his brilliant yellow robes, darting through swirling clouds. The ornate gold frame of his crown was set into a jewel-encrusted base, from which strands of lustrous pearls cascaded. They swayed before his brow, catching the light with his every move. His face was ageless, even for an immortal, his smooth skin bearing neither the vitality of youth nor the cares of time. In the darkness of his pupils, I found a fragment of resemblance to his son, though their opaque depths were devoid of warmth. He did not look particularly terrifying, but something about him turned my insides to ice. Li Wei stopped before me, inclining his head in greeting. Yet his smile was guarded, and his eyes dulled. Did he wish himself back in his room? I wanted to ask him, but not here, not now. Just by acknowledging my presence, he had flouted the protocol that required him to greet the honored guests first. As he walked away, my pulse fluttered as I stared after him like some moon-eyed girl. He looked magnificent tonight, his coat of midnight brocade parted to reveal his silver-white robe, shining as though woven from starlight. His hair was pulled into a gold and sapphire crown, held in place by an ornate pin.
The monarchs of the four seas.
General Chang'e nodded toward the dais, mistaking my keen interest.
It's rare to see them together. Relations have been strained since the western and northern seas' support of the demon realm. However, that is in the past. Perhaps this heralds a new beginning.
Each of them wore flowing robes in varying shades of blue and green, but there the resemblance ended. The king of the eastern sea's long hair glistened as spun silver against his dark skin, while the queen of the southern sea's green eyes gleamed from her pale face. The remaining two monarchs sat stiffly upon their chairs, one wearing a crown of coral, the other of turquoise and pearl. Who sits beside them? I stared at the striking immortal with jeweled blossoms sparkling from the coils of her hair.
The flower immortal. Our exquisite gardens are the results of her endeavors. I've seen her revive a withered garden with a flick of her wrist. Although she's not as powerful as her predecessor,
General Chang'e remarked. What happened to her predecessor? It was rare for an immortal to surrender their position.
Lady Hualing chose to live away from the celestial kingdom in the eternal spring forest, a place she cultivated to her liking.
I waited for him to continue, curious about this immortal, but he fell silent, drumming his fingers on the table. Captain Wenshi spoke then.
The Celestials don't like to speak of her. Perhaps it reminds them of what can happen to even the most powerful, should they lose the Emperor's favor.
General Chang'e scowled.
Even such as you from the Four Seas would not wish to anger our Emperor.
I was about to ask Captain Wenshi which of the Four Seas he was from when he spoke again.
It was said Lady Hualing grew distracted and neglected her duties for decades until the court petitioned His Celestial Majesty to take away her position. Since then, she has not been seen, not for hundreds of years.
I wondered why did the Emperor not remove Lady Hualing from her duties sooner, when he seemed not to tolerate the slightest disobedience in others. But then all heads swung to the entrance, eager whispers rustling through the crowd. I turned to see two immortals approaching the dais.
Queen Fengjian and her daughter, Princess Fengmei, from the Phoenix Kingdom,
Captain Wenshi told me. Her name hit me like a blow. The princess rumored to have been betrothed to Li Wei? Gleaming cloaks of gold feathers were clasped around their shoulders. Over their long robes of crimson brocade studded with pearls. A crown of fire rubies glittered on the queen's hair. When the princess lifted her head, something in my chest contracted. She was the girl I had met in the courtyard earlier, my partner in the inadvertent destruction of Li Wei's painting. The Empress greeted them warmly, rising as she gestured to their seats. Something coiled tight around my heart when the princess took the chair beside Li Wei, who sat there with a face carved from stone. I breathed deeply, determined to keep my spirits high. Fortunately, General Chang'e knew plenty of interesting facts about the noble guests and did not hesitate to share them. For the most part, Captain Wenshi was silent but solicitous of my needs, ensuring my wine cup was always full and placing the choicest delicacies on my plate. Whenever I looked up, I found Li Wei staring at me. As the night progressed, his expression grew darker than a moonless night, more thunderous than a spring storm. At this moment, he appeared more fearsome than the Celestial Empress. Captain Wenshi leaned toward me.
Why is His Highness glowering at you?
You must be mistaken, I said quickly, trying to conceal my unease. The look he shot me was one of disbelief, but then he shrugged.
In that case, he must be staring at me.
Perhaps it was the wine loosening my tongue, or the informal way he spoke as I replied. Do you think your appearance so pleasing? Not everyone is struck with admiration at the sight of you.
I would be interested to hear what you think of me.
His brows were arched in a seeming challenge. Even if it does not please you?
Especially if so,
he said, his voice deepening. I laughed, a hollow sound, unable to banish this feeling of unease, that something was not quite right. Why was Li Wei glowering at me? There was no other way to describe his clamped lips and his eyes, burning like coals into mine. Unfortunately, the Empress noticed it too. She crooked her finger at me, the pointed gold sheath glinting in the light. Only now did I realize that these were no mere ornaments, but phoenix talons, said to be laced with a potent poison. Dragging myself to my feet, I walked to the front of the dais and knelt, awaiting her command. Her piercing gaze reminded me of a hawk swooping down upon its prey. Your hairpin is lovely, a rare treasure indeed. Where did you obtain it from? The softness in her tone sheathed the dagger in her words. Heat rushed into my cheeks as I fumbled for a response. A polite reply, a witty remark, anything but the yawning silence implying guilt where there was none. Li Wei rose and clasped his hands before him, folding over in a bow.
Honorable Mother, it was my gift to her.
You're fortunate that my son is so generous. How do you plan to repay such kindness? Her red lips parted in a mirthless smile. Today is my son's birthday. What gift did you bring him? I can only hope it is one of equal worth. Li Wei raised his voice.
Honorable Mother, there is no need for this. If this offends you in any way, I ask that you speak to me alone.
She ignored him, the covers on her nails glinting as she tapped them on the armrest. She meant to humiliate me, announcing to everyone that I did not belong here. But I was not ashamed. I was furious, not just for myself, but for her threats to my mother, her failed attempt to ruin my father, her selfishness in not reining in the sunbirds until tragedy had struck. No, I would not flinch from her stare. I would not cower from her condescension. I lifted my head, a bright smile on my face. I have given His Highness my gift. However, if you wish me to share it, I would be pleased to oblige you. She stared at me as though I were the lowliest of insects. With an imperious nod, she gestured for me to proceed. I drew the flute from my pouch, my fingers as cold as the jade in my hands. My tongue flicked over my dry lips as I stole a glance at the crowd, beginning to regret the reckless words that had gotten me here. Some guests appeared bored, while others glowed in anticipation of my encroaching humiliation. How could I perform before such an audience? I could barely breathe, my ribs clenching as though they were squeezed together. Behind me, footsteps clicked against the floor as someone approached. It was Captain Wenshi carrying a stool which he placed before me. Bending down, he whispered in my ear,
When the battle lines are drawn, advance with a clear mind.
I swallowed hard, nodding to him in thanks. His words were a comfort to my crippling fear. To retreat now would indeed be worse than failure. I would rather the Empress think my performance lacking than believe me to be a coward or liar. I sank onto the stool, grateful to sit and hide my shaking legs. Drawing a deep breath, I lifted the flute to my mouth. The Empress, the Emperor, the royal guests blurred from my vision. All I saw were Li Wei's eyes looking into mine. This was his song, and to him alone I played. My notes soared, clear, strong, and true, reflecting every emotion he had ever evoked in me. The moment it ended, I bowed to the dais and fled back to my seat. I wished I could disappear into the ground amid the silence, punctured by a smattering of applause from those who had not yet realized the expression on the Empress's face was not admiration, but rage, boiling over like a pot left too long on a stove. My anger had cooled, and I worried how she would retaliate. Not now, but later. She would not forget this insult. I did nothing except what she had asked, and yet we both knew my defiance lay in refusing to let her make a fool of me. While she was the Celestial Empress, she was also Li Wei's mother. Through my rashness and pride, I had tangled further the ties between us. I tried to catch Li Wei's attention, but then the sweets were brought out, the guests murmuring in delight. The confections were exquisite, almond cakes pressed into the shapes of flowers, golden squares of osmanthus jelly, crisp sesame balls, and a rainbow assortment of puddings, but my appetite had vanished. The Empress whispered to her husband, who nodded once. His deep voice rumbled across the sudden hush in the hall.
Tonight, we come together to celebrate the birthday of our son, Crown Prince Li Wei. As it happens, this is a double celebration. We are just as delighted to announce his betrothal to Princess Fengmei of the Phoenix Kingdom. May they forever be of one mind and find everlasting happiness together.
As though in a trance, my hand moved of its own volition, joining the others in raising our cups to our lips. I did not taste what I drank, if it were anything at all. The Emperor's announcement slid into me as a blade to my chest, twisting cruelly when it struck. I heard nothing beyond the roaring in my mind, not the cheers from the guests springing to their feet, nor the clapping which resounded throughout the hall. My fingers curled on the table, my nails scratching the polished wood. Tears pricked my eyes, but I fought them back, biting down on the inside of my cheek until the warm taste of metal and salt filled my mouth. A wedding was a joyous occasion, believed to bring luck. As the guests fought to outdo each other in lavishing praise upon the couple, I sat numbly in my seat without the strength to even flee.
What a harmonious combination of pearl and jade.
The Phoenix Princess and the Dragon Prince, an auspicious pairing indeed.
See their beauty? Truly a match made in heaven.
Each word was a stab to my festering wound. I glanced up at Li Wei in disbelief, half expecting him to leap to his feet in denial, to tell me this was just a cruel prank. He did not look at me, though, and his eyes were wintry, devoid of light. Worse yet, he accepted the congratulations from the guests with a terse nod. Princess Fengmei blushed at the attention, and when she touched Li Wei's arm, my insides shriveled as a dry leaf dropped into the flames. This was real. He was betrothed to another. A desperate urge to leave gripped me. I wanted to be alone, to let my grief pour from me as a river into the ocean. But I crushed the craven impulse. I would not run, nor would I hide. Just when I thought I would surely collapse from the pain, a hand covered mine, firm and strong, the cool touch penetrating my daze. Lifting my head, my gaze collided with Captain Wenshu's, alight with understanding. He was a stranger whom I had met just this evening, but right now, he was my only anchor in this raging tempest. I accepted his silent comfort, clutching his fingers, feeling as empty as a discarded wine vessel which had been tipped over. spilling its contents into the uncaring soil. 13. The night was clear with a hint of frost, but I was already frozen inside. I sat in the courtyard, staring at the solitary moon in the sky. Could my mother see me? For the first time, I hoped she did not. I did not want her to sense my pain, to know what a fool I had been. A shadow fell over me, but I did not look up, not even when he sat beside me.
Chang'e, let me explain.
My fists clenched in my lap, the veins straining against the skin. To have my love toyed with so callously as a blossom plucked and left to wilt on the ground, I deserved more than this. I would salvage what pride remained, for I had lost too much already. Your Highness, do you require my assistance? If not, I'll retire for the night.
Will you listen to me?
The light in his eyes was extinguished, drowned in an abyss. I stood up, my legs like planks of wood. He reached for my arm, but I recoiled, not wanting to be touched, least of all by him.
Very well.
His voice was taut.
You may assist me tonight.
I followed him in silence to his room. I lit the lamps, heated the coals in the brazier, warmed a jug of wine, and brought him a fresh set of clothes. On the table, I placed his books and materials for tomorrow. I had performed these tasks for him countless times before, yet never with such cold precision, nor such an unwilling heart. He stood there, watching me with those dark, unfathomable eyes. When he raised his arms, I slipped off his dark blue coat and then his white and silver robe, hanging them up on a wooden stand. I drew out the gold hairpin and plucked the crown from his head. His hair fell over his shoulders, and I combed through it, careful not to let a single strand touch me. When I finished, I bowed and turned to leave.
I have not dismissed you, he said quietly.
I have performed all my duties. What else do you need me to help you with? My voice was flat, my heart leaden. I could not stomach this pretense for much longer.
Sit. Listen, he added, please.
Though my pride raged at me to leave, I lowered myself onto a chair. Staring at the flickering candle on the table, I decided that I would stay until it was extinguished. No more would he have of me. Li Wei sat beside me, running his hands through his hair. I noted with detachment that my efforts with the comb had been for naught.
My mother always wanted to strengthen our ties with the Phoenix Kingdom. They are a powerful domain, a desirable alliance, and her kin, although Queen Fengtian is a distant relation. When the sunbirds were slain, shot down under our watch, the bond between our kingdoms was strained.
He drew a ragged breath.
It was then that she pushed for a betrothal between Princess Fengmei and me. I never agreed, even though it was my duty, what was expected of me. I had no wish to marry someone I did not love. Years passed, and I believed she had abandoned the idea. When I left you yesterday, I went to my parents intending to tell them of us. They informed me then that a betrothal had been settled that very day between Princess Fengmei and me. Of course, I refused, but they explained the urgency of the union. Beyond prestige, it was to ensure our survival. The Phoenix Queen is restless, according to our spies. Our enemies have made overtures to her to join against us. We can't afford to lose the friendship of the Phoenix Kingdom now, much less have them as our enemy. Not when we've been weakened after the war with the Demon Realm. Not when we are threatened by them still. The truce between us hangs by the most tenuous of threads, likely to snap should they gain the advantage, and we are certain they are scheming against us even now.
He continued in that dull, flat tone.
I must protect my kingdom and family, however I can. I cannot willfully do anything which might endanger them. I cannot be selfish, no matter how much I want to be.
Silence stretched between us, as wide as a gaping chasm. His words were meant to be a comfort, but I was wretched inside. Perhaps I could have borne it better if he were forced, but to know he had accepted this betrothal of his own will hurt more than a fist plowed into my gut. Yet, logic was merciless and reason relentless. unsparing of my wounded heart. Would I have chosen any differently from what he had? Would I not have made any sacrifice to save my family and home? It was not enough. Not enough to ease this ache in my chest, this lump in my throat, this queasiness churning in the pit of my stomach. He had said he loved me, and then promised himself to another. I was sick with these writhing, twisting emotions which swelled and burned and scorched from within, but he would not know my despair. I would not tell him not to spare his feelings, but my own. To weep before him, to beg or plead, that I could not bear. Whatever happened, I would hold my head up high. My pride was what I had clung to during the worst of my times. It was what I had left now. But it was not easy. I fixed my gaze upon the wavering candlelight, fighting for calm. Why was it that the times which called for greatest strength were when we were at our weakest? I looked away from him, not from spite, but to hide my tears. Remembering the folded note in my pouch, I pulled it out with trembling fingers. How cruelly prophetic my jest. There were indeed no prizes in this game of hearts. My grip tightened around the paper, crushing it into a ball. How foolish I had been to think everything would work out, just like in the books I had read. The lost child found by his mother, the monster defeated by a valiant warrior, the princess saved by the prince. But I was no princess, and fairy tales did not exist for the likes of me, not even in heaven. Somehow, I found the strength to say the words that needed to be said, the ones which would set him free, the ones which would break my heart. I understand, I do. But I must leave. You don't have to. I'll always have a place for you here. He reached for me, but then drew back at the last moment, his fingers folding into a fist. I would not be indebted to him further, even though some might think this was my due, now that he had broken his faith with me. But I would not weigh the shards of our love in favors. Grasping the threads of my dignity, I shrouded myself in indifference. What place can you offer me? As one of your attendants? Someone to play with your future children? A companion to your wife? My laugh was jagged and hard. I want more of life. It was his turn to look away. Where will you go? I'll help you find another position. Anywhere you wish. No, I said quickly. Too quickly. It would have been so easy to accept, to let him ease my path. A fierce gladness clutched at me that I was not forced to accept his kindness, that I had won a position through my own merit, not his favor. I would be beholden to no one. My path forward was clear. I had no reason to delay. Perhaps being in the army would help me forget all which had transpired here. Perhaps starting anew would give me the chance to heal. I pulled the hairpin from my hair and offered it to him, the clear stones glittering as they caught the light. When he did not take it, I placed it on the table. My fingers moved stiffly to the skydrop tassel by my waist, but I hesitated. This I would keep as a remembrance. It was a gift of friendship, and no matter what, he was my friend still. A crushing weight fell over me, sapping the strength from my limbs. Maybe it was knowing that when I left this room, I would never return, that our time had come to an end. I thought bitterly, I should be accustomed by now to tearing myself away from those I loved. Rising to my feet, I cupped my hands together and swept him a low bow. Your Highness, it was an honor to serve you. Memories of our time together flashed before my mind, our years of friendship, our few stolen days of love. Then the candle flame flickered, struggling for its final seconds of life before curling into a wisp of smoke. The room now enveloped in darkness. Part 2. 14. The fire crackled, sparks shooting in the air. I did not flinch from where I sat on the ground, sanding the shaft of my arrows to make them leaner, faster. The work was not necessary, but it kept my hands busy and my mind silent. A corner of my mouth curved into a mocking smile. Just a few months ago, I had been studying in the Chamber of Reflection, and now I was preparing my arrows to slay a monster. Xiang Liu, the nine-headed serpent, had fled the immortal realm to the world below. It plagued the nearby villages, flooding their rivers and snatching up victims to feed its insatiable appetite. While mortal warriors had long tried to bring this creature down, they were no match for its strength and cunning. I wondered why the Celestial Emperor had waited till now to send his forces, just as he let the sunbirds roam unchecked for so long. I did not think it was a conscious cruelty, but rather the detached triviality with which a mortal might view the life of an insect, unable to comprehend its suffering. It wasn't only the Emperor who felt this way. Many immortals shared this view. Perhaps I might have been like them, if mortal blood did not run in my veins, if my thoughts of my mother and father were not entwined with this place. I stared at the mountain that rose from the ground. Shadow Peak, this place was called. In the fading light, the dark rock glistened as though coated in a layer of grease. This was nothing like how I imagined the mortal realm would be when I had gazed from above. No glowing lanterns, no laughing children, not even a single tree to adorn the barren land. Just a tautness in the air, akin to the moment a storm breaks. I shifted on the ground, the metal pressing against my shoulders and ribs. Shu Xiao had not exaggerated its weight. It struck me as a bad joke that I was now clad in the same armor which had roused such fear in me before. But this was my choice. I thought back to the night I had left the courtyard of eternal tranquility. Determined not to delay any longer, I had sought out General Jianyun and accepted his offer to join the Celestial Army.
Excellent.
He had smiled then, a rare occurrence.
Have you informed His Highness? He should.
He knows. My nerves had been too frayed to traverse the winding path of courtesy. I bowed to him again, hoping the gesture would take the sting from my next words. General Jianyun, I thank you for this opportunity, but I have a few terms.
Oh?
The single syllable somehow conveyed both indignation and amusement at my temerity. I don't need an official rank or remuneration. What I want is the freedom to choose my own campaigns and to be acknowledged for my achievements. My body tensed, bracing for his disapproval. A scowl twisted his lips. Was he displeased by my audacity? But I knew my own worth now, and was no longer just grateful to be granted any opportunity. I would not plow through the ranks for a meaningless title or power I did not covet. Nor would I so readily place my future into the hands of another. Those most trusted could still let you down, even when they did not mean to. A lesson I had learned with leeway, and one I learned well. General Jianyun folded his arms across his chest, fixing me with a fierce stare.
That's not how it's done. The commanders form their troops for each assignment, considering each soldier's experience and skill. We all serve the best interests of the Celestial Kingdom.
As will I. Such hollow words I spoke. I did not do this out of loyalty to the Celestial Kingdom. All I wanted was the Crimson Lion talisman. But it would be no easy feat to shine brighter than the other warriors. And so, in this night filled with stars, I would chart my own path to blaze across the sky. I would pursue the opportunities which I believed would capture the Celestial Emperor's attention. I would earn the talisman, the key to my mother's freedom, the sole ambition that burned in me unchanged throughout the years, now unfettered by my weak heart. It shamed me how I had hesitated before. I would never have forgotten my mother. I would have done all I could to help her. But happiness had a way of blunting one's edge, of dulling one's urgency. Never again, I vowed. Finally, General Jianyun had relented. Awarded the nondescript rank of archer, I had joined Captain Wen's troop, the only commander I knew, and, more importantly, a celebrated one who would be assigned the most crucial campaigns. I had cursed that decision in the weeks to follow, however, shooting targets until my fingers bruised, sparring until I could no longer stand, and weaving enchantments until I was as drained as a wrung-out washcloth. Captain Chang'e trained his soldiers hard, and each night I had fallen into bed, my body limp and my muscles afire, eager to sink into the oblivion of slumber. Nor was training without its dangers. Shortly after I had joined the army, Captain Chang'e led me to an underground chamber lit by flickering torches. Gray stone lions with bulbous eyes lined the walls, their open jaws mimicking fearsome grins like they were mocking us. How my skin had crawled at the sight of them. The moment the captain left, the door slamming shut after him, darts hissed from the lions' mouths, hurtling toward me faster than rain pelting down in a storm. I dropped to the floor, rolling under a ledge, but I was too slow, pain streaking across my leg. I winced as I plucked the darts from my flesh, before drawing an arrow and firing in the direction they came from. By accident, more than design, I struck a lion's mouth. Its jaws slammed shut, ending its attacks. Only after I had hit all of them, my arrows protruding from their jaws, did the barrage cease, and the door swing open once more. My blood roiled at the sight of Captain Chang'e standing by the entrance. Had this been a test? "Why didn't you warn me?" I demanded.
In a real battle, would the enemy warn you before attacking?
"You aren't my enemy!" He tilted his head to one side, pinning me with his stare.
I'm glad you think so. But Archer Chang'e, your performance was dismal.
I jutted my chin out, my pride pricked. "I shot all the lions. I escaped the trap." His gaze lingered on the red marks dotted across my calf, blood trickling down in thin streams.
This was the first stage in the Chamber of Lions, and you still got injured. If these were coated with venom, you'd be dead.
Shaking his head, he strode into the room and struck my arrows from the lion's jaws. Darts sprang toward us once more. I wanted to duck, to roll to safety, but as he held his ground, I forced myself to stay beside him, my heart thumping as the sharp points hurtled ever closer. Just as I was about to dive to the ground, he flicked his hand almost negligently. A shimmering wall of ice appeared before us, the darts slamming into it. My pride vanished like steam in the cool air. A gust of wind, a wall of flame, any of these would have worked. While I had learned to summon my magic effortlessly, its use did not come instinctively to me. Perhaps I had managed without it for too long. When attacked, my first instinct was to retaliate with my hands and feet. Like a mortal, I thought silently, true to my roots. His voice hardened.
The most powerful warriors are proficient in both combat and magic. You wouldn't survive long on fighting skills alone, nor can you rely on just magic. If you did, you would soon find your energy exhausted, a most dangerous circumstance. No matter what is happening, keep a clear mind to judge when to use your power for greatest impact, but don't hesitate to use it when necessary.
His words struck me. Eager to prove myself, I had returned to this chamber on my own. Each time the traps had been a little harder. Sometimes spikes shot through the ground or fire erupted from the walls. I ended the sessions sore and bruised, blood dripping from my wounds. It was only later that I learned the Chamber of Lions was reserved for the army's most skilled warriors. While most had taken months, a year even, to master every trap, it took me a matter of weeks. And I was stronger, faster, more powerful than I had ever been. But was I ready for what now lay ahead? I stared at the dark mountain, trying to quell the queasiness that rose in me, wondering if I had made the right choice in coming here. My first battle against a monster so fearsome, its very name cowed immortals into silence. Someone approached, footsteps treading over the earth. I was glad for the distraction from my bleak thoughts.
Archer Chang'e, I've been searching for you.
Captain Chang'e sank down beside me.
There are things you should know of Shang'e.
I started to rise to greet him, but he gestured for me to remain seated. When we were alone, He often lapsed into such informality, rare in the Celestial Army, governed by rank and hierarchy. Was it because we had bonded at the banquet, when he lent me his strength at the moment I most needed it? Or was he at ease with me because I held no official position here, seeking neither his favor nor approval?
Of Xiangliu's 9 heads, you can only strike one, he said abruptly.
I stilled, my fingers curling around the arrow. What do you mean?
The core of its power lies within its 5th skull, the middle one. He stared into the flames. If we were anywhere else, we could attack it with magic. However, on this mountain, our powers are bound.
I had been warned about this. When I tried to reach for my energy here, it darted away just like it had when I was untrained. Is this some enchantment? He shifted, the leaping flames throwing shadows across his face.
No one knows. We only discovered this place when we hunted Xiangliu here. The serpent is both ancient and cunning. Maybe it knew it would be safe here.
Can't I shoot all its heads until I get the right one? My flippancy disguised my unease. The thought of 9 jaws gnashing their fangs at me sent a chill through my bones.
If that were so, we could just get a dozen archers and blanket it with arrows. Xiangliu would be long dead and we wouldn't need you.
Why don't you then? I retorted, irked by his words.
Its other heads are invulnerable. Striking the wrong one only antagonizes Xiangliu, raising its suspicions and making our task harder. The last time we were forced to retreat once our archer was incapacitated. But with every battle, we learn more about our enemy.
I stared at him in surprise. I had not realized they had tried before. Perhaps only victories were flaunted, defeats swiftly buried. Is its 5th head any different from the others? I asked.
It's not covered in scales as the rest, and its skin is almost like ours. To destroy Xiangliu, you must hit its eyes, clean through the skull.
He paused.
Unfortunately, its eyelids can't be pierced by any weapon, at least none which we know of.
I can only shoot its eyes when they're open? I repeated numbly. A terse nod.
Xiangliu protects itself well. From what we gathered the last time, these eyes only opened when it struck with acid, its most powerful attack, and even then for the briefest of moments.
He picked up a stick and tossed it into the fire. It crackled, sparks flying high, mirroring my mounting tension. My arrow fell to the ground. Is that all? How I prayed it was. He nodded, as though this were a simple matter of hitting a target from 10 paces away. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? I cursed myself inwardly for not seeking more information before. I had not cared enough then. However, tonight, I found I was not so indifferent to my own survival.
Don't doubt yourself. Xiangliu won't escape this time. We have all we need, he said with calm assurance.
And what might that be? I asked a little suspiciously.
2 archers, he quipped.
You'll have one less soon, I told him darkly. He laughed.
And speed. Your speed, to be precise. I've never seen anyone shoot as accurately and swiftly as you. That will be crucial.
He spoke the last part somberly. I might have trained differently if I'd realized what we were up against.
How could you have pushed yourself harder than you did?
He countered before his tone gentled.
Don't you feel ready?
My mouth twisted into a grimace. More than my fear of the serpent, I did not like this feeling that I was a chess piece played to his whim, told what he believed I should know, positioned where he thought I should go. Such was the hierarchy of command as Shu Xiao had warned me, but I was no powerless recruit. Next time, I preferred to decide my readiness on my own. His lips curved as he rose to his feet.
Good night, Archer Xingyin. It's late and everyone else is already asleep.
I expected him to go to his tent, but he walked toward the mountain instead, disappearing into its shadow. Where was he going at this hour? My curiosity battled with my reluctance to intrude, my desire to respect his privacy winning out. We all needed time to ourselves. The flames flickered weakly before dwindling into a smoldering heap. Without its hiss and crackle, the silence was only punctured by the steady breathing of the other soldiers. I had no idea how long I sat there, lost in my thoughts. When Captain Wench finally reemerged, he stared at me, sitting alone in the dark.
"Why are you still up?"
he asked, striding toward me. "I'm not tired." My eyes flicked to his hands, streaked with dirt. "Why are you still up?" I repeated his question back to him.
"I needed to inspect our path for tomorrow, to make sure there weren't any surprises."
He sighed.
"Get some sleep. Tomorrow we have a steep climb and a hard fight."
I left him then to find my place on the ground. The nights were the hardest. When I lay alone in the dark, the memories I drove away in the light of day came crashing down. Of warm, dark eyes and a teasing smile, which wore away at the hard shell around my heart until I wrapped my arms around myself, struggling to breathe through the tightness in my chest. Perhaps it was worse tonight because I was in the mortal realm, where my mother and father had met, fallen in love, and been happy. Until the sunbirds. Until me. Once I had screwed up the courage to